call the meeting to order. Approval of minutes. Consider approval of the minutes from the September 6, 2022 regular and closed meetings.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Councilmember Aldridge, second by Councilmember Townsend. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have several public hearings. Number 3, ordinance 2258 to consider rezoning 16 acres on Bethany Road from R10 to light industrial, zoning amendment 2212.
Thank you, Council. This is ZMA 22-12. The applicant is Mr. Jeremy Honeycutt, and the owner of the property is David W. Gallimore and Trish Gallimore. This is a vacant lot. Well, it's got a house on it as well at 2605 US Highway 52 and off of Bethany Road. This is our application. Receipt, the notice there. Certification of letters, the public notice, and our application here. Like I said, it's a request by Jeremy Honeycutt to rezone a combined 16.28 acres of tax records 23235 and 16144 from R10 General Residential District to LID Light Industrial District, and it's off of Bethany Road near US Highway 52 North. It does have city water and sewer available at this property. There are no environmental impacts to this property of the floodplain or the watershed. The 2028 land use plan, the future land use map classifies both parcels and surrounding as commercial and industrial and heavy commercial areas. The commercial use there, just to keep in mind, it does include heavier uses such as mini warehousing, which is what this applicant intends to do with this property when it gets rezoned, or upon successful rezoning. Development considerations are traffic, compatibility with residential areas, and availability of adequate infrastructure. It also talks about industrial and heavy commercial uses here. Warehousing, industrial park areas are typically found in those areas in our land use map plan there. These areas and their uses may have health and safety hazards greater than average impacts to the environment, and the development considerations within these heavy commercial and industrial uses are access to adequate highways, which this does off of Bethany to US 52 North, and water and sewer, and minimizing impacts of surrounding properties. So the current zoning map here, the crosshatch area is the area to be rezoned. To the west, you have heavy industrial. To the north, you have R10 there. You have to the east, General Highway Business District. Also some gray area that's light industrial. Also to the south, some light industrial, and also heavy industrial. The star right there denotes where this property is in relation on our future land use map plan. And here's just the aerial of it there. The property to the south as well as will be in this rezoning. So all public hearing notice requirements have been met for the September 19th, tonight's meeting. The applicant intends to combine and rezone 16.28 acres approximately out of a total of 18.31 plus or minus acres to LID Light Industrial District in order to harmonize with existing industrially zoned property and potentially develop this property for compartmentalized storage. LID zoning is defined by the zoning ordinance as being designed to accommodate industries and warehousing operations which can be operated in a relatively clean and quiet manner and which will not be obnoxious to adjacent residential and business districts. LID zoning does allow for compartmentalized storage. However, all uses should be considered for this request. The future land use map designates this site as primarily industrial and heavy commercial area. Per the future land use plan, this area is encouraged for heavy commercial and industrial growth based on close proximity to a major thoroughfare and access to sewer and water. Furthermore, the existing manufacturing business to the west, Martin, Sprocket, and Gear, and to the south, International Automotive, further supports the above requested rezoning. Giving the proposed use, existing adjacent properties to the south and west currently zoned as heavy industrial district, as well as the subject properties being designated as commercial and industrial areas on the future land use map, there are merits for the proposed rezoning to be consistent with the city's 2028 future land use map plan. And at the September 1st, 2022 Planning and Zoning Board meeting, the board unanimously made a recommendation for city council to approve the initial zoning or the rezoning based on the consistency statement. And I can show you the map again. This is the area to be considered. And this little portion where the house is at will be cut out of this rezoning, will remain R10, and then this area right here will be LID. And these are the consistency, inconsistency, and future land use map amendment statements.
Council have questions for staff?
Once again, planning and zoning approved it with consistency, with what did they, any stipulation?
There's no stipulations.
So they didn't have any at all.
No,
Okay.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Further questions? Thank you, staff. This is a public hearing. Anyone who cares to speak for or against, please come forward.
Motion to close public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Townsend, to close the public hearing, second by Councilmember Hall. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Move to approve ordinance 2258, which also is ZMA 2212
With consistency.
with consistency.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Hall to approve zoning map amendment 2212 with the consistency statement. Second by Councilmember Townsend. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Moving to number 4, ordinance 2259, to consider annexation of 86 acres on City Lake Drive, number 2204. Staff, you want to introduce?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to give a little background on this. This is a tax parcel of 13976 owned by the King heirs at this time, 86 acres on City Lake Drive. It is this parcel right here highlighted in bright blue. This is City Lake Drive, following along the border of the property. Everything in blue, yellow, that is inside the city limits right now is already annexed. So, pull that up. And let's see, we got step analysis. We have the petition, which was approved by council last month. Meets and bounds, boundary survey for the property, their application here. Stop me at any time if you need me to slow down. Receipt. We got our staff analysis. The applicant is SDH Smith Douglas Homes out of Charlotte, LLC. As mentioned, this is approximately 85.53 on the GIS. It shows up as 86. So there's a little bit of discrepancy there, but that's primarily just based on measurements. It is existing Stanley County RA right now, and they're proposing this to come into the city in R10, General Residential District. If approved, a follow-up agenda item would address that. The applicants plan to offer additional housing to residents of Albemarle in a convenient location along City Lake. Property right now is vacant. It is surrounded by, proposes residential single family. It is surrounded on 3 sides by residential ag, county RA, and residential ag district, as well as R10. There is a little bit of IO where the community college is, as well as light industrial district right there on the corner of Poplar's Grove Church Road. Sewer is available along Park West and Poplar's Grove Church Road. The future land use plan shows for this area to be a secondary growth area for the city. Properties are not located in regulated floodplain or watershed. There does not appear to be any other significant environmental impacts on these properties. There are concerns over stormwater runoff. We're a concern of neighboring residents at previous hearings about this property. This was denied last time it was heard. I think that might have been in November of last year, if I'm not mistaken. The applicants have done some studies, which they would be happy to present, and have also met with residents about this annexation and this development. In the R10, which is what they've proposed, this maximum lot yield could be up to 297 single-family lots. We do not have firm plans on this. Again, this is annexation and zoning at this time, not subdivision and development. But they have, the applicant previously was requesting around 180 lots. They have said they're going to reduce that a little bit. So somewhere under 180 is what is expected to be gained out here. In July 29th, Smith Douglas, they did petition, and that's where we're at now. The applicants have conducted additional environmental studies and have reapplied for annexation since it was previously denied. As I mentioned, they met with local residents on August 19th. Planning Board heard and considered the rezoning portion of this on September 5th, again, for R10. They did recommend for approval with a consistency statement. Again, that would be an additional agenda item. The applicant has proposed to develop the site with approximately 170 to 190 single-family units. Staff believes the development of this site is likely to range between 170 and 230 single-family units. This will add between 411 and 556 new residents to Albemarle. That's an increase of around 2.47% to 3.34% over our existing population. As we typically do with annexations, we've given some projected numbers there. Based on assumed build-out numbers, development of this property would likely produce a minimum of $339,000 and a maximum of $458,000 in annual revenue. Fire department expenses would be a minimum of $128,000 and a maximum of $173,000. Police, a minimum of $88,000 and a maximum of $119,000. Projected cost of the Works Division, and that would be streets alone, minimum of $39,000, maximum of $53,000. Impacts and costs of stormwater infrastructure, we don't have anything on that at this time. The electrical, water, and sewer, that's available right now. We don't have any more detailed numbers on what that would be. We would refer to public utilities with any questions on that. NCDOT traffic impacts. Traffic impact study is being performed on this property at this time. We know from the most recent traffic count on City Lake, which was done in 2015, there's not a whole lot more development that's happened out there since then, but that was about 300 trips per day on that street. Unless the numbers proposed numbers increase dramatically, we don't see there being a significant impact on City Lake Drive. Other costs and impacts. Current figures show a potential net annual surplus in revenues from this development of $82,000 to $111,000 after street maintenance and public safety expenses. As shown, this represents approximately 75% of the projected revenues from this development. No estimates were given for streets division or landfill staff and equipment, parks and recreation staff and facilities costs, and costs to other internal city services, which may need to increase staffing to keep up with the impacts of projected growth. Additionally, no costs have been assumed for any infrastructure upgrades or long-term maintenance of utilities or increased demand on utility staff.
Council, have any questions for staff?
I do. Go back, if you will. Back. Stop right, slide back down. So you come down to, there you go. So as I understood from your introductory comments, I remember when this came up last year. I
Right.
couldn't have told you when, but I'm glad you got the dates. Any change other than some statistics and information that the petitioner has? Any change on the request?
Well, being an annexation, there's not a whole lot to change
No, it's
on the
the
request.
same piece of property.
Right, same
Everything on
property.
the,
They're requesting annexation. Yeah,
so the ask is the same
that's
as
right.
it was last
Yeah,
year.
for this, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Further questions for staff?
I might just make a comment, Your Honor. I don't know if last year we were doing, and correct me if I'm wrong, I know we have not always done the workup on the cost per department.
No, we
can't-
started doing that after this
After-
annexation and the one on South 52.
So this one is, so these are first numbers we've seen on this one.
I believe so,
I
yeah.
think so too.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
I've got this pulled up. We've got some other reference documents we can pull up here. We have last names of property owners on there. This is kind of quick, but should be helpful. Give you a little reference.
And will you leave that up?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
This is a public hearing. I have few from the petitioner signed up to speak. Is it Matt Chrisholm?
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. My name is Joe Padilla. Matt Chisholm is our Charlotte affiliate president. I'm with Smith Douglas Homes, and I appreciate you giving us a few minutes tonight to talk about and answer questions about this project. First of all, a little bit about us. We're a privately held regional home builder. We've been in the Charlotte market since 2017. We're currently building the second phase of Park West, which is right off of Poplin Grove Church Road. And this will actually be an extension of that. There is going to be a connection back through Park West 2, if you look just to the south. As we go through site planning, and we've done very preliminary work to this point, but there will be a connection back through, which we think will also address a lot of the traffic flow coming off of that site. As your planning director said, we did come before you last year. I would stress that when we met shortly after with the residents, we became aware, I think very quickly, that there was the flooding issue that they had brought up last fall was something we wanted to address. And we have made some commitments to deal with that. And I'm going to let our engineer get into the details of that really quickly. But we had a hydrology study done of the area. And that was in response to the concerns that were raised about the flooding on City Lake Drive, as well as the surrounding properties. And as a result of that, what we've determined, and I'll let our PE get into deep dive on it, that we believe we can put stormwater controls, post-construction stormwater ponds on this site as part of this development that will take much of that, really almost all of that runoff coming on that site, and then channel it into those ponds so it's no longer impacting the surrounding properties. Right now, if you are familiar with the site, it is a almost completely timbered site. The owners of the property had timbered it 10 years ago at least. So it has very few controls currently to control that runoff coming off of it. We believe what we can put on, and it will impact and lower our lot yield, but we understand the importance of doing this, to put in these stormwater ponds, which will help reduce that, and we believe can actually address and fix much of the problem, at least the problem coming off our site. The hydrology study didn't look at a global situation coming from every part of the basin, but we did look in a little bit of detail at what our site generates and how we can control that with these ponds. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew Grant, who is with BGE, who can talk a little bit about that study and then what we think we can do as a result.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. My name's Andrew Grant. I'm with BGE. We're the civil engineer and land planner for this site. As Joe mentioned, after last year's discussions with council, we have met with the property owners, and they kind of discussed two different issues that they were seeing on their downstream properties. The first was the general drainage pattern from our site kind of runs south to north. So really from the community college and Park West to City Lake. And that, as Joe mentioned, some of that is contributed to the fact that the site was timbered about 3 years ago. So the trees were removed.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Trees were removed, and therefore runoff was increased to those property owners. There we go. That's topography as well to kind of show drainage patterns. As Joe mentioned, we are proposing with our development and have made a commitment to the property owners and staff that we will be installing BMPs or dry or wet detention basins to help reduce the amount of runoff from our site. So they saw an increase in runoff with the clearing and timbering of the site. We're committed to reducing that back down to pre-development rates. The only way that this condition is going to be improved from the existing condition where it's a timbered site to improving and reducing the amount of stormwater runoff that these neighbors see is through the development and implementation of stormwater runoff measures on our site. As Joe mentioned, it is a significant decrease in lot yield. I know there was discussions of somewhere between 180 and 230 lots proposed on this site. We're actually looking at significantly less than that because of these increased measures that are not a requirement of the city and not a requirement of the state. The second issue that was presented to us was kind of the holistic area around City Lake and some of the challenges and flooding that has been experienced there recently. I did look at the FEMA flood study for Long Creek and through City Lake there. Although our drainage area is large, we are less than 1% of the contributing drainage area to that whole overall basin. So the basin drains about 30 square miles of water, and not just our site, but our site, the community college, Park West, the whole area is about 0.3 square miles. So about 1%, a little bit less than 1% of the contributing drainage area to that. And again, we think we'll see a significant increase and improvement with the development of our site. The other issue that was discussed is traffic. And as we refine the actual land plan, we'll do a TIA as part of the preliminary plat. But in preliminary review of the traffic patterns with the number of entrances we have, the cross connectivity to Park West, we're looking at adding less than 1 car per minute to City Lake Drive. So it's not going to be, bumper to bumper traffic out there. We're talking, and that's in peak rush hour conditions, less than 1 car a minute, less than 60 trips running to the east, running to the west, and then through Park West down to 2427. So while development does bring additional cars, there is significant capacity available on City Lake Drive, and our development is not going to overwhelm the existing infrastructure. Any improvements that are needed will be identified as part of the TIA with the NCDOT, and we'll implement those as part of our development. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Council have any questions? Okay. Do you have anyone else to speak?
I think that's it for now.
The only question I would have is to the petitioner. You mentioned that you had spoken to the landowners.
Correct. We met a few weeks ago with 3 of the property owners adjacent and
The adjacent property owners.
correct.
Do you mind telling us who those 3 were?
Paige Emerson, her father, and Helen Simonton. I think they're actually here as well to speak. Yeah.
So 3 of the folks surrounding or adjacent.
Yes, we met with the 3 individuals who raised the concerns to the council back in November.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. This is a public hearing. Now I have Carla Wyrick signed up to speak.
And then these pictures may give you references of some things that may share. We did meet with the, the petitioner. It's okay, we don't, I think what we have here.
Everything else was sent email earlier.
Okay, if I sent you guys all an email last week, which you're not going to see tonight, which is a very, very good picture of the flooding that we have, an active flood. So anyway, I'll come back to that in a second. My name is Carla Wyrick. I am the daughter of Jim and Marilyn Louder, and this homestead 35737 has been my home for 50 years. When I returned to Charlotte, back to Albemarle, from where I currently live in Charlotte, it's very likely that this will be my homestead. But this home has experienced flooding, or this parcel has experienced flooding for years since my parents have lived there. City Lake Drive is already being washed over with heavy rains. The present basins and culverts are at capacity. My question is, who is responsible for the culverts and the basins? The failing infrastructure and the failure to maintain the streams around this lake and 17 miles of creek water that's flowing from North Stanley County, the northern part of the county, there's 17 miles of water that's flowing down the creek, Long Creek into Long Lake. And it's currently contributing to excessive flooding that begins at City Lake Drive, and then it flows south to Albemarle, involving Old Charlotte Road from US 52 to Coble Avenue. And from what I understand in the stormwater studies that I've participated in, well, I've heard or listened or participated in city council meetings, we're 10 years out from being able to map the stormwater system that's involving, where this flooding is impacting the city of Albemarle, mapping the pipes. So with this increased development and not knowing when we're going to have our stormwater system in place for the city, I'm a little concerned just about the overflow of water and how much pressure that's going to put on our city utility departments, and because I think that we're already at capacity. But why would the city agree to increase impervious area around a water source that once served as a protected watershed for the city of Albemarle? There's so much water coming to this site. Who's going to protect the private owners of City Lake Drive from the water that comes into our homes and to stop the erosion that has occurred? And then I think about the safety of the current residents and the increased number of new residents on the road that has 3 significant areas of flooding. City Lake Drive is not much more than 1 mile and 2/10 of a mile long. It's not a big road. And there are 4 curves and 1 hill on that road. There are multiple blind spots on the road. And for someone to say that 1 car per minute, 300 cars a day, 1 car per minute is not going to impact that road, I find that very difficult to believe. Because as I have lived, as my parents live right in the corner, if you look at the handout I gave you, gotta figure out what page I'm in.
Kevin, will you come up, please, and X out of what's there so that she might use the map if maybe so that, thank you.
Need any of those pictures?
Well, that picture,
They're
you
right
can
here if
probably
you need any of
use,
those,
okay.
I'm not sure what's going to pull up.
Well, let me just work with what you got. But you can't see my mouse where it is.
Yeah, we can.
Oh,
We
can you?
can.
Okay, so my point was, right here, you'll see the name where Louder is, Louder, and there's a curve right there. You've got the Stanley County Country Club, or the Shriner Club is here to the right, if we're going up the hill. And then Jim lives on the right. And when you come around that curve, we have experienced 3 people drive into our yard because it's such a dangerous curve. In fact, 1 person almost hit our house. This is just over the 50 years that we've lived there. And there was one time that my sister had a bike accident coming down the hill and almost got ran over. And that was right when Hugo occurred. And she was in the hospital in Charlotte for probably 3 weeks as a result of that accident. So it's a dangerous road, whether you think it is or it isn't. The current residents, people that go up and down that road, they speed all the time. So Jim's house is right here at that curve. And where the developer has presented to us, which this could change, they're planning to put an entrance or an exit right here beside a Smith. And that's coming down the hill of City Lake Drive. When I'm backing out of the driveway of my parents' home, I have to watch the hill and make sure I've got nobody coming down the hill and that they're not speeding anymore. I mean, even going 35 is a little much. And then I have to look to the right to make sure nobody's coming around the curve right by the Shrine Club. That's dangerous. And I think I would invite anyone and everyone to go out there and drive that mile of road and go, as soon as you turn on City Lake Drive and you go around the curve there, where we had the flooding in 2020, there's a curve. And then we continue on. We have another curve right at Jim and Marilyn's house and the Shrine Club and Pages. And then we go up and we have another curve at the Cooks, and it's like a sharp S curve. And the mileage, you're not supposed to go any more than 20 miles an hour. But the road itself, drivers aren't supposed to go more than 20 to maybe as much as 35 miles per hour. But they do, they fly. And I have to be very, very cautious and conscious about when I'm backing out or when I'm pulling out of the driveway. But the developer is planning to put the road to create access points right there. Not to mention the development that's been approved by the county behind City Lake Drive. And I don't even know the count there of how many people are going to, how many homes they're going to put there. But I think we're putting a large number of cars on a road that has not typically traveled. I mean, you may have 300 cars a day, trips per day in 2015. And then you're going to put all these new residents, as many as 180 lots at this 86 acres, which could be 360 cars. And then also count what's going on with the cluster homes that are back behind City Lake on Bobcat Road. So I just think there's going to be, it's too excessive. And also, why are we putting so much? We have 3 areas on City Lake Drive in the map handout, and I'm sorry that you see pictures of the road and the different dates when it flooded. On May 21st, there was 2.61 inches of rain that rained that day, and that's from the North Carolina State Climate Office. 2.61. So you can see the photos of what occurred in November 2020, and then you can see videos of what happened at the intersection of Poplar's Grove Church Road, where both City Lake Drive and Poplar's Grove Church Road were overtaken with water. And it was excessive moving water. People could not get home. They couldn't get home at the top on either side of City Lake Drive, whether you're at the top or at the end of the road. And then on September 16th, 2018, there was 2.74 inches of water. These are the dates these photos represent. And then on November 11th, sometime between November 11th and November 13th, we had 1.14 inches of water. So you will see there's timestamps of whenever my siblings and I were talking about my parents' house. Paige and Brandon were building their home right across the street from my parents, and they were living with my parents when the rain started, September 16th, 2018. It was 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and you can kind of see the photos that Paige has here, the time frame and how the front yard was. And then not even an hour and a half later, you see where the water has crossed over City Lake Drive and is flooding the entire front yard at 5:36 p.m. And you'll see the timestamps that are on our cell phones. I did not have these to present to you in October because it took me time. I had to go back through our old cell phones and find photos. But you can see on September 16th, 2018, at the intersection of City Lake Drive and Blakeney Drive, you can see the heavy amounts of water that's just flowing through there, just in the photo that I present. At the front of the presentation, you can see on May 21st, the post that the city of Albemarle Parks and Rec they posted on Facebook all the flooding that they had at City Lake. I mean, this lake is just, we just have so much water coming from the county into this lake that then overflows into this community. And it's going to put people in harm's way if we have and obviously there's going to be growth, there's going to be new residences, there's going to be more people on that road. And we haven't found a solution where water is overtopping the road. And as far as like whenever, no disrespect to the gentleman who talked about the FEMA floodplains, but I know that FEMA floodplains are out of date. I sell residential real estate and I have for 23 years. And when I go to look at the FEMA records, they're different and we're waiting on new ones to be updated. And all of our GSI systems around the multiple counties are reflecting, telling us that. So I think that when we look at what there are, the presentation I sent you in October, that I shared with you guys in October in person, actually showed where the flood zones were on these residential properties. On Jim and Marilyn's property, as well as the property of, I'm gonna find it. The property up here at the top, I had them in the old presentation from last October, but where all this flooding occurred, it flooded this property and this property as well. Now we have a brand new home at this intersection. There's a brand new home that's been built there. And I don't know that the people, when they bought the home, if it was disclosed to them that 2 years prior that it had flooded. But I have evidence that it flooded. And Helen knows the people who lived in the house where the big yellow dot is and why they moved out before it was ever sold, because it was flooding. So anyway, and lastly, my question is, will the developer, the city of Albemarle and North Carolina DOT along City Lake Drive, we have the parks, we have all these amenities, but what are we going to do with regards to the safety of the people that live there and the foot traffic? Oh yeah, let's go to the park, but there's no way to get over to the park. Now you might be able to create a way or some path to get to the park amenities, but who's going to go down City Lake Drive with the crazy traffic that's going to be increased there if we don't have curb and gutters, sidewalks and lights? Is that going to be on City Lake Drive? Is the developer, is the city of Albemarle, is the North Carolina DOT going to provide that amenity to the residents that's going to be consistent from the top of the neighborhood all the way back down to, it's almost a mile of well, you could probably be maybe 3/4 of a mile if you don't go past the road at Blakeney, where the flooding occurs at the Old King's property. But I thank you guys for just hearing me and allowing me to share. Please, if you don't have the video that I shared last week, were you able to open it and see it? I think it's hard if,
I have to be honest with them, and I'll tell you the same thing I told the gentleman before. I'm not going to look at anything before this meeting. So I'm on vision. Most of the council has not seen anything you sent.
well, Kevin, is there a way you can get that up? The one I sent last Friday? Where do I, just the one from last week. I don't
know if they're going to open or not.
I can get to my Canva. That's going towards Jim and Marilyn's house. May 21st, 2020.
2020?
2020. That,
In our email we got earlier, it said May 21st, 2022.
I was
So which-
wrong. And
So it's
sorry.
2020.
Yeah, it was
Okay,
2020. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I have updated that and,
Okay,
because I did make a mistake there, but it was 2020.
Yeah, and 2020 is consistent with the handout.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
with the handout.
Yep.
And there's, let's see, how do I go back? That was, what you just saw was City Lake Drive going towards Jim and Marilyn's house, where the old bootleg joint used to be, and the water's crossing over. So it had flooded the property where there's a brand new home, all that, there were 3 acres there. It flooded the acreage and crossed over. So here, if we go to the front, it flooded this and crossed over City Lake Drive. It flooded this property and crossed over City Lake Drive. Then there's what some people don't know, but there's a little pond right there at the corner of City Lake Drive and Poplin's Grove Church Road. And I just remember it because as a little girl, the farmers would go out and they'd cut down the corn and you would see that pond. But when the corn would grow up, that pond, you wouldn't see it. But there's a pond there. And so the water goes over, and then once it filled up that area, it crossed over Poplin's Grove Church Road. And, I'm sorry, Kevin, is that here? Oh, you got? There. Okay. Yeah, I think this is it. There we go. That's across Poplar's Grove Church Road, going towards Park West.
I know you probably told us this before, but when did you notice the flooding increase significantly? Was it when that property was cleared?
Well,
Did it change?
we would have, it was as growing up, there would be times we would have
Right.
heavy rains and we'd have to keep our sump pump in the house. We'd have to watch it because we would get water inside and we'd have to get our brooms and Jim would have us get it all out. But this excessive amount of rain, I would say 2015, we probably ran it, but it was really after the trees got cleared. The community college was built and then the trees were cleared in 2017.
And did y'all discuss the remediation procedures that they wanted to propose for the site?
They didn't share it.
I
They
mean, the
just, well, they talked
retention,
about the drainage ponds, but that's
retention
probably,
ponds and all that.
that's it. And that was just for Paige's site. There's nothing been just talked about Jim's site.
Okay. I didn't know if y'all discussed these specific locations.
We did. We shared the videos with them.
Okay.
I don't know that you guys got photos. And the video I sent last week, the presentation I sent last week, there was a car at the intersection of Bobcat Road and 73 that ran into floodwaters right there at the bridge. And the lady and her 2 children had to be rescued in August 2018. Right at Bobcat Road and City Lake Drive. And Bobcat Road goes to City Lake Drive. And that was in a presentation I sent last week. But we have not, I didn't have the photos, and this has not been shared with Smith Douglas of the intersection of 35616 City Lake Drive and Blakely Drive, where it floods, where there's photos there from September 2018 and November 2020. But I'm happy to send the same information to them. So, but there's a lot going on there. And I appreciate you guys. It's a big picture, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question. You had mentioned, okay, you said Pages was addressed or
Paige's property, because it's on the side that abuts the developer's property where they're
Okay.
going to develop.
okay,
They have a proposed wet pond or dry pond that's going to be back behind her home,
okay,
but nothing has been discussed on how we're going to remediate the stuff that's taken place at Jim's house across the street where the water is flooding over to our home. Nothing's been presented to us about. I don't think so. I don't think I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't know of a solution. From I think what I understand, it's North Carolina DOT. Oh, that's a North Carolina DOT thing. Oh, why don't we have North Carolina DOT and the city and the county all talking right now before we do development around this big parcel of land that once used to be the water source for our citizens? yes, it's now moved to Lake Tillery, and we have protection around the watersheds that go into Lake Tillery. And this watershed goes to another county. But it just baffles me that we're not protecting the residents that live in that area. And we have for 50 years. It's just a lot of private property owners.
Kevin, did I hear earlier that they were going to do a TIA study and share it with the
There will be a
DOT,
TIA.
and DOT would tell them what they had to do?
This is annexed. Any subdivision of this size, we require a TIA. I think that has been scoped. It's not complete yet. I believe Smith Douglas may have some rough numbers. We haven't received those yet. We did speak with DOT, with Jason Faulkner over at DOT. Similar to most of the larger subdivisions, such as Morgan Hills, once we get into the civil design of that, that will need to be engineered to show them that there's not going to be any offsite, that there's going to be storage for all runoff and everything before it enters their system. So it will be controlled. Now, that's not going to definitely address all the properties that are there. Let's see. This area right here, you do have City Lake that flows onto, kind of in this direction, onto their property and onto this industrial property right here, and then out to Poplin's Grove. There's likely nothing that this may be able to be improved on site with some stormwater here, but it's not going to, it's still going to, City Lake is still going to flood there.
And there are residents, I see houses.
This is Park West right here.
Okay.
I don't know if, I can't speak as to whether or not it flooded into that neighborhood or not. At the time, it does go uphill here pretty significantly, so I'm not sure if that was affected or not. But that will still be an issue for the area. We do have, it is a big drainage area. There's a lot of properties inside the city and outside the city that are feeding into this. These, all these areas around here, though, they would have to make sure that there's no runoff that's going into, onto the street there. It would have to be stored and released into their ditches. This area back here, where there is some drainage, there is some major flooding that does occur back here on Blakely. That's a private drive or what that is back there. But so there, you can see there's a break right here in the topo, and I'm sorry it doesn't show all the property there, but there's a break in the topo. So this portion would flow over to here. A small portion of this property would affect that. That would likely need to be addressed as well, as this would eventually enter the DOT right-of-way there. So they are going to require that, and typically what they do is they will require a bond before construction gets started, and if they go out there and start having problems, like some of what we've seen on Morgan Road right now, they can actually pull that bond, they can close the streets down until the issue is repaired. So DOT has some answers for that. They certainly don't have the answers for the entire basin there.
Council, have any further questions?
Just a comment, just for complete transparency, both for the petitioner and these respondent landowners. I did get email communication from both, from Carla and from Smith Douglas, and I do not, I just, for complete transparency, if it is whatever kind of hearing, I will not talk with folks ahead of time. I will not look at things ahead of time because I want it all done in public. So I appreciate you doing that, but just understand that's me personally. That is not this entire council, but that's the way I will do it just because I want things done and open. So thank you very much for understanding.
This is a public hearing. Anyone else care to speak for or against? Please come forward.
But just watching the presentation, my name's Joshua Ballinger. I live in Albemarle at 530 Meadow Rock Drive. But just watching the presentation that was put up there and some of the numbers that went through, I don't think that the bring in revenue outweighs the cost. I think it's about even, or I think you said it's like 75-25 or something like that. 75-25, and they're already talking about all kinds of issues. I think that the people that are coming up here that are petitioning for this have come half-cocked. They don't have an answer for a lot of things. I hear a lot of do-outs before this is actually put forward, and I think that they should provide those do-outs before it's actually considered. That's all I have to add.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak for or against? Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
Hi. My name is Kate Tobias. I am actually the president of the HOA for Park West, the original Park West, which I believe it's maybe labeled Park West 1 in here. I actually live at 504 Azure Avenue, which backs up to the woods where this annexation may be. There's a couple things. I believe today we're only discussing the annexation, correct?
Right now.
Okay, there's a couple things on our list from our homeowners association or our residents and what their concerns are. In terms of the flooding, I don't remember her name, but the one that she showed that is on Poplands Grove Church Road, that is us. We receive that water and it runs down. So I actually just spent, and I could email it to you, $4,000 on a drain system for my backyard because it floods so bad. I had someone from the city come out there and they told me it was not their problem because it's my property. So with that being said, I do have pictures that I can send to you guys later that they are where my backyard is flooded. It's not usable without that drain system in place. The mud was so thick that I actually had to wait on the contractor. Let's see, he came out there in March and it was not done till June because the mud was too thick to be dug up. And that was how bad it was. It did get worse in 2017 when that property was timbered out. It has not gotten any better just because there is some growth, but we flood a lot. When I believe it was Wade Journey Homes who came in and built on Platinum and Sapphire 2 or 3 years ago now, when they came in, the flooding got worse. They didn't cut down trees. They cut down too big of trees. We've lost everything that would hold the water, and it's continuing to happen. So the flooding, I believe someone stated that there is a significant hill. It all runs downhill. Every bit of it runs downhill. And for us at the bottom, there's nowhere for it to go but through our yards. We do have, right where that young lady showed it going over Poplands Grove Church Road, a little bit up the road before you get to the Park West sign coming from City Lake Drive, there is a retention pond, a water pond. It doesn't do a thing. It sits, it's not big enough. It doesn't work. I'm not sure what it is, but it overflows. It doesn't do a thing. I believe the city or possibly DOT put a big round, I don't know the correct word, some kind of tube or something to make the water go under the road. That doesn't work. It flows right over it. There's just no control over it whatsoever. So we're just concerned that it's going to continue to flood and it's going to get worse with the amount of homes that are there. And then with traffic, we have tried to actually get the speed limit lowered in our neighborhood. We were told it's 35 and that's what it is until you can prove or have the records to indicate or petition to have it lowered because of the traffic that we already have. City Lake is a great cut through from Concord down to Stanley County. People drive, they cut through. We have GPS now. We have a lot of industrial commercial stuff, which is great. It doesn't really bother any of us, but this is going to up that traffic too. And we don't know where these people will work. As someone that drives a lot for work, City Lake, Poplands Grove, Park West are not a priority for the city. We don't get plowed when it snows. When it's ice, we flood. We are the last for everything. And we may not be the last, but we are one of the last ones. I know personally that I have slid off City Lake Road a couple times because it's not plowed. It's not taken care of. It's a cut through road. I believe she said it's 1.2 miles and no one tends to it. And a lot of those in and outs of that development are on curves. And I don't know where these people will come from, but unless you're a pro at driving in the ice, they're not going to make it on those roads. The buses don't come through when it snows. I mean, there's just a lot of things that could really be affected by annexing those in. And again, this is my opinion and a couple people in our development. As it is, our kids, we're kind of in the middle there. We're annexed, but we have kids at Indy. We got kids at Albemarle. We get plowed. We don't get plowed. I mean, it's just, we're not really consistently hanging in there with either side. And so I just think more people is going to create a bigger mess. There are some days you can't get in. City Lake Drive is shut down. Poplar's Grove at Kingsley's shut down. So you have to go all the way around down Main Street, up past the actual, where St. Martin Road is at West Main, all the way down and around up the church and back in. So you will have to go an extra mile or two just to get home because the roads are blocked off because they're not taken care of. And I just don't see it getting any better with this amount of homes going in there and the amount of people in there between the water and all the other issues that occur with us. There's just no way to see it. And again, if you would like pictures of what my backyard looks like when we're in the peak of rain, I will be glad to forward those to you because if we could have pigs in our development, they would be very happy in the backyard that we used to have before our $4,000 drain system was placed in. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anyone else care to speak for or against?
Hello, everyone. My name is Helen Simonson.
Ma'am, can you speak in the microphone, please?
Can you hear me now?
No.
Speak up.
Just
Pull it
pull
down.
it
Pull it down towards you.
Okay. My name is Helen Simonson, professional wetland scientist. My address, do you need my address?
Yes, please.
Okay. 6701 Lakeside Drive in Charlotte, North Carolina, 28215. Hello, Council. It's been a year since we spoke, and it was about this same property. And while I prepared and looked over some notes, I began thinking about the hot topics that we discussed about this property a year ago. And we talked about roadway flooding, the road is overtopping, we talked about NCDOT, and we talked about partnerships. So I ran across a really great study, and it was published in February of this year, and it was done by 7 researchers at NC State. And it was published in the Environmental Research Letters, and you can find it online. I'd be happy to send you a copy. It's titled Predicting Flood Damage Probability Across the Countermentius, United States. And I'm going to read a portion, and it's really the punchline from the abstract. And
Excuse me just a minute. Will you just pull the mic down towards you some? That may help.
Is that better?
Better pull it a little bit closer.
Is that better?
Much better.
Okay.
Thank you.
So reading from the abstract from this paper that was done by 7 researchers at NC State University and published this year in the Environmental Research Letters, it says, quote, our research identified flood damage probability hotspots across multiple spatial and regional scales with high probabilities common in both inland and coastal regions. The highest flood damage probabilities tended to be in areas of low elevation and close proximity to streams with extreme precipitation and with high urban road density. Doesn't that sound just like City Lake Drive? I want to also reference another study done by Hubbard Book Ecosystem Study. And that study got into it's a very technical paper, but when we analyze it, we look and we see that the punchline of that abstract says that the impervious surface results in stormwater. That clear cutting results in an increase in flooding. But what is even worse is impervious surface. So, excuse me. So from multiple aspects, we see that increased impervious surface causes an increase in stormwater. And we know that our current FEMA flood system is not correct. It is not up to date. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And this was one reason that these researchers at NC State got together and used a computer-based model, very simple model, to pull together extra essentially congruent areas outside of the current map system. So that kind of brings us into the NCDOT. So NCDOT, as we're all aware, has standards, roadway standards. And when we look at City Lake Drive, not only are we missing the adequate infrastructure underneath the road to carry our drainage, but we're also missing shoulders for vehicles to pull off if necessary, or to swerve when that person has a big truck or whatever it is, right? We're also missing guardrail, which would be really, truly necessary around these curves, and particularly with the increase in traffic. And as Ms. Wayrick talked about earlier, 3 different instances that cars are coming off of the road and into their front yard because it's that curve. So had the opportunity to meet with Smith Douglas as part of the group on August the 19th, and started a conversation with Mr. Kevin Robinson about some of those issues and flooding. And I'm going to read a portion of his reply to me this September the 15th. And he said, quote, "In almost all cases, local jurisdictions are prohibited by statute from making recommendations on specific design elements, such as minimum or maximum house size, number of stories, etc., for single-family detached homes. We also do not have any ordinances on lot coverage or total impervious allowed apart from properties in the watershed, which this property is outside of. I can speak from experience that most developers prefer to limit impervious to the least amount required due to current cost of paving. I'm sure this will be no different." And while Smith Douglas was prudent enough to come and do a study and look at the drainage, by their own admission, they only looked at the flooding on their own properties. Why would they look at the whole watershed? That's really none of their accord. That's the city's accord, and the city and NCDOT. So that brings us to partnerships. When we think about partnerships, a year ago, I was really hopeful that the city would partner with the NCDOT, that we were going to be having a study done on the infrastructure. But in the same email from Kevin on the 15th of this year, he states, we have not had discussions about the roadway yet. With City Lake Drive being DOT maintained, they will be involved both in the TIA and any necessary improvements that will come from it, as well as with stormwater. Why are we waiting? Because when we look at this, we're all aware that this water 17 miles upstream is coming into City Lake, that it's obviously overflooding, and it's not in larger rain events. It's in rain events in less than an inch, which does not meet NCDOT current standards, but that this waterway also drains downstream to the heart of Albemarle. And so this is a unique opportunity for the city, not only to come in for City Lake Drive, but for everyone downstream. If the city still has not had an opportunity to pass its stormwater management plan. Earlier this year, just a couple of months ago, from the Biden administration Build Back Better plan, that's a tongue twister, isn't it? They have federal money for infrastructure. And so over $100 million was given to North Carolina, and the North Carolina Department of Natural Resources has $84 million in grant money just for stormwater. I went to 2 presentations that staff did on being eligible, and after attending those presentations and then reviewing Albemarle, I felt that Albemarle was eligible for this grant money and emailed staff. And Kevin replied on August the 22nd and said that he would forward this information on to Ross Holzhauser, who's the Public Works Director, and would be taking a look at that. That grant money is $400,000 for planning. $400,000 would sure go a long way to taking a big look at this water situation and getting a handle on some professional engineering solutions and infrastructure upgrades and improvements. Has that grant been applied for? Because it is due September the 30th, and staff at the state was adamant that it closed at 5:00 p.m. So thank you all so much for your time. This is a big watershed issue. Let's not tsunami wave ourselves into a problem.
I will tell you, the grant has been applied for.
That is fantastic. That is excellent news. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Again, it's a public hearing. Anyone care to speak for or against?
My name's Thomas Townsend. I live at 36534 Cooper Road. I'm a builder, and I just want to make one point of clarification so everybody is absolutely clear. The young lady that just came up here made a good point. If you think clear cutting that land increased the water drainage, you put the number of houses they're talking about in there, and I'm not for or against houses. I'm a builder, okay? But you put that hard surface in there with the driveways and all of the roof structures, and you're talking a tremendous, tremendous increase in water drainage coming off of there. So you're going to have a tremendous increase in flooding. And unless the city and the county and the NCDOT can get together and come up with a really good plan to address these water issues, you know, I think you guys need to be very, very careful, because you're going to have some very unhappy citizens moving in to those houses, and they can't get in or out of that area, and their houses are going to be flooding. So I just wanted to make that point of clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak for or against?
Yeah, hello. My name is Matt Chisholm. I'm the affiliate president for Smith Douglas Homes here in the Metro Charlotte area. And I did want to just reiterate that we did take the initial hearings concerns over the flooding very seriously, and we conducted the hydrology study. And so I just wanted to introduce a preliminary site plan that highlighted the areas that our engineer worked on to be able to control the stormwater runoff within the site to the extent possible. We definitely took those concerns very seriously. We're a privately held builder out of Georgia. We build in 5 cities, just in this focus in the Southeast only. And we really value the business relationships we establish, and we want to be invited back to do business again in the towns we work with. So that's very important to us. And so just wanted to make sure that you had that exhibit and could see the highlighted areas where we have designed stormwater runoff to be contained on site. Initially, I think we're at just over 150, which is less than 2 per acre, proposed right now. And we're again at the early stages of this. So definitely want to work with you and partner up to try to have something that makes sense for the community and for the residents. We want to be good neighbors to the people next to us.
When I ride by, I know some of the land slopes toward City Lake. Does
Yes, sir.
all of it slope toward City Lake, or does some slope back toward Park West?
He can answer you more accurately than I can, if that's okay.
Yes. So to answer the question, the entire site drains to City Lake. It does drain in different channels. So I think there's 4 different places where the site channelizes down to City Lake. And those were the locations that were studied as part of the preliminary hydrology study. So I believe there are 4 culverts currently on City Lake. And again, all of this was done preliminary because we are still working through the site plan, coordinating with DOT. But we'll continue these efforts because we want a safe condition for the residents. As Matt mentioned, long-term relationships with the city. And ultimately, it's going to be their homeowners that live here as well. And so they want to make sure that the conditions are safe. I will mention that a lot of the video and things that were shown from the flooding are actually not directly correlated with this development. This development does drain to the lake, but a lot of the flooding was from the lake and the drainage area upstream over by City Lake and Poplar's Grove Church Road. Our neighborhood will provide alternate means of ingress and egress through the connections with Park West. So in addition to trying to increase the detention on our site and improve the flooding condition for as much as practical for our development, we're also providing alternative transportation means of ingress and egress for the road as well to help disperse some of that traffic.
It looks like you have 3 connections to City Lake planned
I believe it's 3 connections to City Lake and 2 connections to Park West. Yes, sir.
and 7 detention ponds, is what I'm saying?
I believe so.
And Your Honor, to following up on that, just for folks that are watching, can you please, the engineer,
Yes, ma'am.
missed your name.
Uh,
Could you please take the cursor and on this map, show where those 7 are so that folks that are watching this know where those 7 proposed are? And while you're doing that, is this one of the proposals or information that you shared with the Carla and those folks?
Yeah, so I'll start by doing the pond. So the
Okay.
first,
But is this the same information that you have shared?
This particular site plan wasn't finished.
Okay, so then go ahead if you don't mind.
correct, yeah. So there are 7 ponds. The first one is here in the northeast corner. Second one here is kind of on the northern portion. We have 2, make sure I'm in the right place, 2 straddling. There is a draw through here, so we have 2 detention basins straddling that draw. We have 1 here kind of in the northwest. And then we have 2 over here on the western side of the site, 1 generally in this area, and then 1 in here. So all on kind of the northern property line, trying to capture the water before it leaves our site to the north. And then as Matt mentioned, yes, this site plan was kind of an evolution after those conversations based on what we heard from the adjacent property owners and the issues that they communicated to us. And this is one of the ways that we're able to help fix the problem because the problem is not going to go away if there's no development. It's been going on for at least 6 years that they've documented. It will continue to go on until something is in place that meets or exceeds the state requirements for stormwater detention to help alleviate the flooding issues.
So follow up to this, who developed this?
That was our
Okay.
firm in conjunction with Smith Douglas.
Bottom right-hand corner where you've got the site data, just FYI.
Yes.
Stanley is not spelled correctly.
Uh,
I would catch stuff like that. Thank you.
oh, there you go.
Where
No,
Park West is, behind Park West, you will keep that sloped away from Park West and not toward Park West? Is that what I'm seeing?
Through here,
Yes, all
Yes,
that will slope away from them.
it will all drain down around the property line to the basin in the northern corner is the intent. And again, we're early in design, but that is the intent, is to capture all of this into that basin.
We're currently building homes in Park West. We certainly don't want to create any additional problems for those folks either.
Park
What-
West number 2, right?
Council, have any further questions?
How many units did you say you were expecting to build
This,
per acre?
I'm sorry, per acre, 1.89. So it's summarized, I'm sorry, 1.83. So we're showing 159 units. It's in the table in the bottom right.
What could be built now under the current zoning? Okay. Right. Right. Okay.
Further questions, council? Thank you. Anyone else care to speak for or against?
Carla's that. I don't have to rebuttal.
Yes, ma'am, come on up.
We've asked multiple times for them to share that with us. I can be very honest, we've shared videos with them, we've shared photos, but the 2 photos at City Lake Drive in Blakeney. But we've been totally transparent. But we've asked them before our meeting in August, would they share with us? They didn't want to. We've asked them since then to share their proposal with us. They've not shared that with us at all. But I do want to share what this young lady is talking about with all the water that's flooding into her place. It's not coming from this section here. It's not coming from here down. It's coming from where they said, Kevin said that there will still be flooding issues that occur at this one intersection of City Lake Drive and Poplar's Grove Church Road, the first 2 parcels that flooded that I shared. That's where the water is coming and flooding into that area and overflowing into her yard.
That's coming from
Existing. What's there now that no one, and Kevin said even after they do what they do, it's still going to possibly flood. And what's happening is that water's coming over flooding into her property, into the industrial property across the street on down to Coble Avenue. And then we talk about Kingsley and Long Creek that runs, I mean, you can't see it here, but you've got the old industrial building on Kingsley Drive that has been rehabbed, and you've got a creek right there. And that creek, in fact, my father was on the phone 2 weeks ago with somebody from Public Works, and it might have been Ross. Ross, did you call him? Somebody called my dad about stormwater issues, and he said, hey, listen, there's this massive tree that has fallen right there by that creek bed. You can gain access to that tree off of our property, our private property at Kingsley. But if that tree hits the pipelines, if it goes downstream, it's going to tear our infrastructure up to pieces. If you want to get access to it, come to the property. But, I mean, that's Kingsley too. And Kingsley, so you've got City Lake, and then you've got the creek along Kingsley, which is Long Creek. So the water is just, it's just overflowing. And what you don't see here on this map, when the young lady said, if she can't take City Lake Drive or Bobcat Road or City Lake Drive, and she can't take Kingsley, and then she has to come all the way down Main Street to get to Poplar's Grove Church Road. Well, let's hope that she can cross Main Street, because I've been there. In 2018, I was there and I saw the massive amount of flooding that occurred. And the next day, we had 4 business owners, because we own those properties. Jim owns those properties. We had 4 business owners, and 2 had to close their doors. And I was the one in there with my siblings, cleaning all the muck and all the dirt and all the water. And then that's when we learned we had these massive basins and culverts underneath our building in a large basement that we didn't know existed until we had professionals come out to tell us how we could resolve our water issue. So it just doesn't stop right here. It has a downstream effect. So if she can get across, let's hope that she can get across Main Street. But I think she said she had to go all the way around to St. Martin's Church Road, which would be back over 52 St. Martin to 2427 St. Martin's Church Road to then get to Poplar's Grove Church Road. It's a lot of water in that area.
Here, this is public record. You're welcome to it. And I think they said they have completed that since y'all met with them. So, but you are more than welcome to it. Kevin, remind me what you said about our current land use plan. What does our current land use plan call for there?
This is in the future growth area, and it's basically residential. Let's This is all the city's future growth area of the county. We have a
And when was the last-
larger one.
May I follow up there? Kevin, bring that back up again.
Mm-hmm.
So the last to be annexed in there, when was that done? I know that's an unfair question.
I believe it was probably the community college that came in after Park West.
Park West 1.
Park West, well, all of Park West was annexed
in
at
the same
one
time.
time,
Okay.
but they did it in 2 separate phases.
Okay.
Yeah. Now zoom out a little bit now. Anyway. Yeah, so this would go out effectively to pretty much the edge of the community college right now. And then this down here is Crystal Village, I believe. And then city limits continues on up kind of in a northwesterly direction up towards Concord Road.
Further questions, council? Anyone else care to speak for or against?
Move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Hall to close the public hearing, second by Councilmember Aldridge. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Council, what do you want to do with annexation 2204? Or let me ask this, are you ready to act on 2204 tonight?
If we do nothing, that is, to my fellow council members, if we do nothing, we're doing nothing. We
That's
either
correct.
vote to accept it, vote to deny it, or table it for a later date. Is that not correct, Mayor?
That's your choice.
Since there's not a motion, I will move to deny the request, at least for a motion on the table.
I have a motion by Councilmember Halls to deny the annexation,
Second.
second by Councilmember Aldridge. Further discussion.
I'm going to have to probably vote against that. I think I sort of buy into the flooding caused by or the worst flooding caused by the clear cutting. Seems like that triggered more of it. And in development of these things, and I'm not a developer, but you have to be able to control the water runoff on these properties. That's DOT's responsibility, that's their responsibility, and I just feel comfortable that this might improve the situation.
Question, is
So-
City Lake Drive,
DOT.
it's DOT.
Further
Your Honor,
question?
Your Honor, before when Carla was, and I'm sorry, I was Wyrick, is that right? When Ms. Wyrick was up before, she mentioned a previous zoning or previous land we looked at as a potential zoning for maybe last year before. Did we deny that?
This land
This
came
is the
before
same
us.
thing.
It's the same.
Thank you.
Council, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Those opposed,
No,
motion carries.
Your Honor, there's only one no?
One no.
One no.
Before moving on, the information within the packet, under number 4 in the description, it's got ordinance 2259 annexation Baden Lake dock. What is that?
I think that's just an error,
A typograph,
typo. Yes.
I would think.
Since number 4 did not pass, number 5 will not be necessary to hold that public hearing. I'll move into an unannounced delegation. First I have is Joshua Ballinger. He wants to discuss chapter 68 of the city ordinance as it pertains to drag show being hosted on the 24th.
Good afternoon, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I'll try to be brief. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council, mayor, those in attendance, and those that are watching live right now on the stream. My name is Joshua Ballinger, and I reside in Albemarle, specifically 530 Meadow Rock Drive. The topic that I'm going to be discussing tonight is not going to be an easy one, as it has become a hot button topic as of recent. So hot of a topic that me even being here to discuss it is going to lead to more personal scrutiny, threats upon my home, and investigations from officials being paid by my tax dollars. I'm here to discuss a drag show that is being brought to Albemarle, the originating state of the show, how it has changed, and how I believe that this form of entertainment is close to violating Chapter 68 of the city ordinance. There's a website that has been hung to give visual references for my speech tonight, as some of the photos are not appropriate for this forum. And I'll share that with you, the website, and it's also password protected just for you guys to look at. I can publish it any way you'd like. The first advertisement that I saw about the drag show that is being held at Tiffany's at the boardroom was on the 28th of July. The show is being put on by a company called Dku Entertainment. We will get into them a little bit later. And of course, it started a lot of comments against the show and those of support as well. Common theme behind the comments of support is that how this is something that our town needs. The owners of the restaurant / company seem to be boasting with pride that this show will be the first drag show in Albemarle's history, while the entertainment company, Dku Entertainment, is making the comment, in quotes, taking Albemarle by storm, end quotes. Myself and others realized that this event did not list an age requirement for entry to this show and started to raise concerns about the topic. The show has changed to 18 and up, with there being tickets having to be refunded. This happened along with a statement from the owners that stated, in quotes, "We did not originally advertise an age for our drag brunch, as we feel adults should be able to make decisions for themselves and the people they are personally responsible for. But in light of recent posts and chatter, it has been decided that the event on September 24th will be 18 and up only," end quote. They also stated that the only reason that they put the age requirement in place was that they felt bullied into doing so. The owners claim only 2 tickets had to be refunded, but I'm not really buying that. Even if it was 2, that's too many. Let's now get into Dku Entertainment Company. This company is based, from what I can gather, out of Charlotte and is one of the main purveyors of pushing the kids' drag events around the area. They just had one. You've probably seen videos and protests up in Union in Monroe at the public park. Pictures are worth 1,000 words, and again, the website that I aforementioned, I would encourage each member, if they have time, to visit that website for yourselves. Just a few comments from the owner of DKO Entertainment, in quotations. Y'all, bringing drag to the country is always a wild experience, end quote. Next quote. I got to dance with this cute little child which is vibing the entire time we were performing and was so sweet, end quote. I mean, why would citizens and parents around our community be concerned when the performers that the person quoted in these statements is bringing to our town stage names like Lolita Chanel, King Percocet, and Liam Laughlin? While these entertainers like to point to the origin of these names being the wholesome definition, and that is what they like to hide behind, the slang references to these names are jarring at best. Now, how does all this tie into Chapter 68 of the Albemarle City Ordinance? I've read through the ordinance several times, and to me, an ordinary citizen, it is a little murky with terms like regularly not being defined. Tiffany's has already booked and sold out 2 shows and has made comments how there will be future shows, so that, in my opinion, that has met the regularly definition by the intent of their comments. The ordinance defines an adult cabaret, and this is under Chapter 68, as a nightclub, bar, restaurant, or other commercial establishment that regularly features, exhibits, or displays as one of its principal business purposes persons, 1, persons who appear nude or semi-nude, or 2, live performances which are characterized by the exposure of specified anatomical areas or by specified sexual activities. There's a third one, but it doesn't apply to my speech. Semi-nude is defined under the ordinance as a state of dress in which clothing covers no more than the genitals, pubic region, and areola of the female breast, as well as portions of the body covered by supporting straps or devices. Specified sexual activities under the ordinance means and includes any of the following: the fondling or other erotic touching of human genitals, pubic region, buttocks, anus, or female breasts, or sex acts, normal or perverted, actual or simulated, including intercourse, oral copulation, or sodomy, or masturbation, actual or simulated. How does all this apply to the show that is being held at Tiffany's? I've researched and looked at pictures and videos of the previous drag brunches held by this DKO Entertainment Company. And if history was to repeat itself with this show that is being held in Albemarle, there would be violations against the aforementioned definitions of the ordinance. I do not want my intentions for these public comments to be misconstrued, as I've already been called everything from a fascist to a racist. I've been instructed as a straight white male to check my privilege and not comment on something that doesn't concern me. I've been checked up on by Kevin Robinson on professional social media via LinkedIn because he was curious. Funny that he looked for me there instead of the media that he was already engaging me on, if not to see who I worked for in order to use a common tactic to contact a possible employer. Too bad for him, I'm a retired U.S. Army service member. My paycheck's guaranteed. Funny that he is a director of code enforcement, and in my opinion, I want that to be made clear, based off of the exchanges with him, he is using his position to either turn a blind eye or bolster this event. So I want to provide a little clarity now on my position. I'm not saying that a group of consenting adults should not be able to enjoy their preferred type of media. I'm stating that children have no place around it. The common argument that I hear from everybody supporting this, or that detests my stance against it, is that if it is not my child, then I should not be concerned. But I also hear other governing bodies around this county when I speak at the Board of Education or the County Commission. I hear this statement: it takes a village to raise a child. I've heard that so many times. Is this opinion only valid when it comes to education, funding, and curtailment of gun owners' rights to protect children? Is it an a la carte statement? And can we pick and choose when to enact this mentality? I believe that we should all protect children. I think that if you see someone placing a child in harm's way even if it's not your own, then it is every citizen's responsibility to speak out against the harm being done to that child, regardless of the topic. So I will not check my privilege, whatever that means. I will speak out, and I will ensure those placed in positions that are responsible for ensuring the overarching safety of children are held accountable for shortcomings. So my ask from the city council is this: follow along with other municipalities like the city of Monroe, who just last week passed an ordinance R2022-64 and put forward a resolution that would discourage or prevent children from being exposed to adult sexualized media in our community. That, or amend Chapter 68 of the city ordinance to state that persons under the age of 18 are prohibited from attending these types of events, and persons found to bring children to or facilitate said events be held accountable. And again, that website, I have it hung right now. I can provide that information to you. You can go and look up some of the recent drag brunches they've been having, some of the photos that are included. Absolutely go against those things that I mentioned in the city ordinance. And also it has the quotes that I mentioned in here from those owners directly in those quotes at the bottom screen. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Clint Louis, 14314 St. John's Drive, Stanfield. Public speaking concerning family values and upcoming drag event.
Yes, sir. Thank you very, very much for just a few moments. My name is Clint Louis. I pastor the Friendship Baptist Church in Stanfield, and I want to thank you for giving me just a few moments to speak. First and foremost, I am a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ, that God has raised him from the dead, and that's the message that we preach and try to share with everyone. Also, my family and I, we are not native to Stanley County, but we have been here for about 12 years and raising our children here, and we're thankful for it, and we love the community, and folks have made us feel at home, and we have made our home here, so we're thankful for that. But I do come before you today because of the issues at hand with the drag show, as it's being called, coming into Albemarle. As a matter of fact, it is scheduled, my understanding is for Saturday, this coming Saturday, the 24th of September, with 2 shows in the works. There is a scripture that speaks of truth, that truth is fallen in the street. Truth is fallen in the street, where it's trampled on and walked on. In this case, I think it'd be appropriate to say it's being danced on. Everybody is well aware of what a drag show is, where people will dress as members of the opposite sex, and quite often in very sexualized manners. The shows themselves very often in sexualized manners. This particular one is being held at Tiffany's at the Boardroom. It is being billed as 18 and older. It is being billed as a ticketed-only event, and of course, as everyone knows, it is at a private business. However, I believe all of that is irrelevant to the fact that the behavior is a very lewd behavior, and certainly not one that identifies Stanley County for who we are and our values and our family values. The event, I believe, is like a spider's web, and it will attract more and catch more. Scripture is very clear on this type of behavior in both Old and New Testaments, where the scriptures refer to this type of behavior with terms like these: vile affection, against nature, abomination, sodomy. And I want to just be clear for just a moment that I do agree with the scriptural assessments. I do agree with the way it's laid out in Scripture. And so I come before you humbly just to ask that as a board, that we could issue a resolution, a statement that is saying we do not condone this type of behavior in our community. We discourage it. It is not who we are. We ask for God's blessings upon our community, upon our family, upon this county, upon the city. And this type of behavior is completely lewd and completely against who we are. And so again, I come to you to ask that we not normalize this behavior and that we officially and publicly state that we do not condone these types of activity or this type of behavior. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And my prayer is that such a resolution would be made, and I thank you for your considerations.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me first clarify. No, I'll hold that one next. Tiffany Dahl, Albemarle.
How are you guys doing? All right, so I ask that you bear with me because I'm a writer, not a speaker. And just see me through the end. When my sister was very young, she wanted to be a truck. Not a truck driver, she wanted to be the actual truck. Now, we all knew this was impossible, but my father looked at her and said, "You can be anything you want to be, even a truck." My mom laughed, but she still agreed. I carried that with me always. I was lucky enough to grow up in a home that embraced second chances, supported free thinking, and welcomed uniqueness. I mean, that home happened to produce 3 strong, amazing willed women. I've lived basically my entire life in Stanley County. This is my home, but I was ignorant to believe that my literal home and that my community home had the same values. I've recently seen an ugly side of our community I truly hoped didn't exist, and yet I still have hope for this place, because I've also been introduced to the once hidden part of my town, the ones that felt they didn't have a voice or a support system for way too long. A portion of our community that had been searching for a home while they lived with us. The ugly side consists partially of a loud group of haters, and they're going to tell you it's about the children, it's about an ordinance, maybe even it's about permits. But their track record will prove otherwise. They are a group of bullies attempting to force communities to conform to their box of beliefs. It's about their anti-gay and their anti-feminist agenda. You guys can do your own research. I'm not going to send you an email. Do it on your own. And you'll see that we don't want them in our home. As Albemarle, and very specifically downtown, is in the middle of a rebirth and seems to be looking for a toehold on what it wants to be known for, the community has already spoken. In less than 24 hours, 2 shows sold out. Never in this town has that happened before. Not by any business, not by any organization. Your voters said it, and they said it loud and proud. We want our downtown to be known for the arts and unique events and diversity and inclusion. With that, I urge you to be like Harmony and Abel's grandpa and stay open-minded. I also quickly want to point out that if you look at my business, for instance, I offer 100 different services. One week I cook macaroni and cheese. The next week I make tacos. We specialize in flatbreads and munchies in-house, right? You can look up Dku Entertainment and you're going to see tons of things because that's what they do. They're hired by companies to produce a specific type of entertainment. And each time they're hired, they have a conversation with the person and ask what they're looking for. Our drag show isn't lewd. There's no sexual content. There'll be no stripping. It's a classic general drag show with evening gowns and wigs and lots of makeup and singing Dolly Parton, things like that. There'll be laughter and mimosas. There won't be a striptease at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Andrew Grant. Wants to talk about City Lake Drive-In. Did I have somebody here, Andrew Grant? Okay.
That may have been the engineer that spoke earlier.
That's what I was wondering. The drive-in threw me off. Brandon King, rezoning matter, 1708 US 52 North.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. We came before you a couple months ago and was kind of bombarded by what was happening that night. Wasn't really led to believe that's what was going to happen, so I wasn't really prepared. Before the prior meeting, we had spoke, and I think Ms. Hall had mentioned us getting together and trying to work something out, and I was fine with that, and that never happened. We reached out to the board or to the zoning planning department, sent an email, nothing ever happened to that, and then we come before the meeting that night, and boom, it's over. We'd spoke previously at the meeting that we would be fine stepping down from heavy industrial to a lighter zoning, and the last meeting, that was never even an option, never considered. And I was just curious as why we didn't have an opportunity to at least address that being, an option for us. Then tonight, I come in and a business or a property that's less than a half a mile from me is zoned to light industrial with no issue. And I guess I'm a little confused by that. I just felt, like something there just doesn't add up. And I'm not sure what it is. I'm not sure what I've done to upset anybody on this board. And if I have upset anybody, I apologize. I want to work with the city of Albemarle all I can. I want to grow here. That's our plans. We want to grow our business here. I'm looking to bring in another dealership in. We need every piece of that property. I have no desire to build houses on that property. If that's the only option I have, then I'm going to have to leave. And I don't want to leave. We're established here. We're very happy here. We love our customer base, and we want to continue to grow our customer base here. And that's the most important thing at this point in time is, can we work together? Can we move on? Can we make it better for everybody involved? Or is it just a flat out no?
I think your request is you want to start the process over with general highway business district.
If that's what it requires to start the process over, I feel like we've came so far through the process. If that's the only option we got is to start the process over, but I don't want to start the process over and fall on deaf ears again.
Well, you would have to start the process over. Mr. Aldridge, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to, first and foremost, if staff remembers and council remembers back when Mr. King and Mr. Malden first came before us, I don't have the actual dates. I'm going to say it was sometime in June or July. I specifically remember Mr. King stating to the council that he was looking to do a couple things. Number one, the topic got brought up about he wanted a storage lot, which we refer as junkyard. We know that's not gonna what didn't work out. But they also said that I remember specifically him saying that I'm open to whatever zoning change we can make in order to grow my business. And if I remember, he said that you had stated, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you looked to I don't know if it was the director or the planning and zoning board to kind of give you some direction as to how you should apply. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. So, having said that, I think, listen, it's like this. At the end of the day, we want our local business to survive. We want them not just to survive, we want them to thrive. And, I'm not saying that it's all our fault or it was a misunderstanding, but I'm saying if you have a business owner that comes to council saying, hey, I want to expand my business, you guys or you people tell me how I can do that. I'm not a zoning professional, he isn't either. But at the end of the day, he's looking to grow his business. He's got a couple of contracts, I think, pending with maybe several other tractor manufacturers. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I would make the motion that, Mr. King is going to have to go back through the process. But if he does such, I would like to waive any fees associated with getting him approval of what he needs to do to get his tractor business going.
Waiving the fees to start the process over.
Waive it, it's the 500, whatever it's, yeah, correct.
Have a motion by Councilmember Aldridge to waive the fees for a new application for Mr. King.
I'll second that.
Second by Councilmember Hall. Further discussion?
Eh.
All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate your support, and I look forward to being able to work with you guys.
You got it.
Jake Furr, 1247 Salisbury Avenue, wishes to speak on a public records policy, a public comment policy, and closed session minutes.
Jake Furr, 1247 Salisbury Avenue, because that's what the public comment policy says we're supposed to do. If you don't mind, I'd like to speak on another topic. Right, it won't take long at all, if that's okay. So about this drag show thing, I want to remind both sides, regardless of what side you're on, it's amazing that people are actually getting up here and speaking and making their public comments known. But whatever side you're on, let's please remember both sides to keep it civil. Whether you're protesting, counter-protesting, whatever you're doing, don't put Albemarle as the next thing on Fox News, something bad happening. So if both sides can please remember that, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you. So next, the closed session minutes. I've asked staff, and I'm sure you all are aware, in public records request for 6 months worth of public closed session minutes. I was referred and said that, no, we can't do that. They're sealed according to general statute, and they're not going to be sealed until council votes to unseal them. I asked which general statute that was. I was given the general statute. That general statute says absolutely nothing about council sealing closed session minutes being unsealed by council. It actually, what it does say is as soon as the reason for the closed session meeting, as soon as it's not frustrated anymore, that closed session meeting, those minutes should be made public. I think even guidance from the Attorney General states the same thing. And I think his verbiage is shall. And when I ask, when was the last time council's ever unsealed closed session minutes? I basically get crickets from staff. So I'll ask you, when was the last time you've ever unsealed closed session
Currently
minutes?
working on bringing a lot of them.
I understand.
It
But
usually
you're
happens
doing
about
the same
twice
thing that staff did.
Happens about twice a year. Now, I
So
can't
when
tell
was
you
the last time that happened?
I cannot tell you that.
Okay, so how about this? When I go back on the city's website and look at council minutes, where it's the written minutes, there are no closed session minutes. Till 2008, that's as far as your records go on the website. No closed sessions are published. So are they closed or are they open? Nobody knows.
Closed session minute, once unsealed, becomes public record and anyone can see it.
Exactly. So if you did it twice last year, there should have been some from
I'm
2020,
saying about twice.
2021.
But they are working on a group now to bring to council. Now, it will probably be within the next.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that there wasn't a policy brought before you to talk about that tonight, since we've been talking about it. Because it seems like that's kind of what we've been doing here. We've got, when the public records request, once I started making public records requests, staff felt a need to have a policy. When public housing, when that was uncovered, or however you want to say it, when those residents stood up here and spoke, the next meeting we decided we needed a public comment policy. But I was told by staff that there was no requirement to have a policy on unsealing these closed session minutes. But, there's no requirement on those other two policies either. But for some reason, we felt we needed those. In my opinion, those two policies stifle the public, and this closed session minutes thing actually would stifle you, or maybe uncover some things that aren't great for the city council or great for the city in general. Is that my purpose of asking for public records requests? No. It's my right to ask for them. But then again, a lot of them have been stonewalled. And I'll point you back to getting sent, in general, general statute says we don't have to do this. Well, most people would say, okay, general statute doesn't have to do that. Me, I go look at the general statute and actually look and see what it says. But it's just, it seems like that these policies are made to stifle the public. And I remember Britt stood up here and said it was, so the city could be more transparent. That's why we needed a policy. That's not the way it seems for me personally. And I think that staff knows that my only recourse for getting some of these public records that they've denied is a civil suit. And most people aren't going to do that. So if the city doesn't have anything to hide, release the public records. It's not that hard. Release the council minutes. If you haven't done it in 20 years, you got a lot of work to do. If you haven't done it since 2000, I mean, nobody here remembers, I'm assuming, because only the mayor spoke up. He can't remember when.
I cannot tell you the date it was.
Exactly.
It may be 2 years. I don't know.
It's very possible, but it seems like a long time. You know, if you got something to hide, that seems like a good reason to not unseal closed session minutes. The next thing about the public comment policy, and Michael, you can laugh. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
Yes, sir. About the public comment policy is that, and I'm glad that you guys are going to work with Brandon and them. And I had no idea they were going to be here, but I did want to speak on that. You know, when their thing came up a few weeks ago, we were able to read an anonymous letter that may or may not have swayed council's decision at that time. It may be legal as that you can do that, but I would say it's on the borderline of being ethical. That may have been one of you that wrote the letter and didn't want it in public record that it was your name. I think that's something that needs to be revisited. And maybe the public comment policy takes care of that, but I don't think so. It doesn't really typically say anything about public hearings and anonymous letters. So with that being said, I think that's about it.
You know, I got a question. Mr. Furr's requesting closed session minutes and things of that nature. Things that were discussed about personnel, was that part of, if we were to unseal that information, would that be part of the information that they would get?
There's a list of things. Brett, I don't want to speak for you. I'm sorry.
So with closed session minutes, they can remain closed so long as the purpose of the closed session isn't frustrated by releasing them. So when it comes to personnel, the details of specific items that are discussed will not be disclosed, even in an unsealing. Now, if we were in closed session prefacing the hiring of a potential candidate, then that, because it'll eventually become public, would be unsealed, but specific details about personnel matters of certain employees, no.
Okay, so unethical behaviors by certain city personnel could not be disclosed.
So if this leads to kind of a disciplinary corrective action, those always remain closed unless it becomes public record if they are suspended or demoted or things like that. That is that portion would be public record, but maybe not the specifics. No.
I didn't hear that, Britt. What was that last comment?
So if there's disciplinary action of personnel would be public. So in the listing of salary, title, suspension, demotion, things like that are in that kind of list of, I think, 12 items that are public of a person's public personnel record.
I wasn't talking about personnel records, and I think Councilmember was actually referring to closed session minutes. Things that y'all personnel-wise, y'all talk about in closed session minutes, which probably shouldn't be normal personnel.
Did that answer your question, Councilmember?
It did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Moving to administrative reports, Adam Kiker, LKC Engineering, discussing on funding utility projects.
Mayor, good evening. I think relative to this specific item, we have a couple of things, actually one thing to talk about, and I think your staff maybe thought that maybe some of our experience with ARPA funding might offer some perspective if you like. This presentation is very brief and is more geared towards number 8 on your agenda. Would you like for me to go through that now, or I don't want to get out of order?
We can cover them both. Go ahead and make your presentation.
Okay. So this will be very brief. We're here tonight to really talk about an opportunity. The last time we were before you in July, when you were considering accepting the designation as a distressed utility. So we talked about the opportunity for funding relative to infrastructure projects. And as we debriefed and we talked with our team, and as the guidelines for the September 30th funding applications came out, we think, frankly, your best opportunity now that you are designated as distressed and the state allows you to do this is to take the wastewater treatment plant project, the significant wastewater treatment plant project, which the current budget for that is just over $19 million, and resubmit that to the state and see if it scores high enough to receive grant funds. There are a couple of reasons that you're allowed to do that. One, you are now designated as distressed. Two, you've previously been awarded funding from the Clean Water State Revolving Fund Program, and you have not drawn against the loan funds yet. That's the catch there. And this is a great opportunity. Of all the projects that we've worked with you on over the last 6 or 7 years, this wastewater plant rehab project scores very, very high. So what we I wanted you to understand, if you resubmit and you score high enough to be funded, and Mayor, I should offer the important piece to the puzzle is that being distressed, you are applying for, and I mentioned this here, you are applying for against a smaller number of applicants for a larger amount of money, right? And that's and I can tell you, if this project, if you had the same designation as distressed in the spring, you would have been right at the bottom, but you would have scored high enough to be funded. So that's why we got interested in resubmitting this again. Yes,
So
ma'am.
hang tight, just, may I?
Yes, ma'am.
So when you said if we had had this designation in the spring, we would have been there. We would have gotten there. Is that what I heard you say?
Yes.
Even,
If we, it was at the bottom, but
Right.
based on those scoring, and the numbers are important, this project right now, we have it scoring at 62. The cutoff was 58 points.
and that was, and the next funding, remind me? Is
I'm sorry?
when? When is the next opportunity?
September 30th.
That's what I thought.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
So if you apply and we score high enough to get funded, the most funds you could receive in grant is $14,650,000. Now, please don't get overly excited about this. We think it's a great opportunity. I don't want to try and place any odds on it now, but we think this is a good pathway forward. The statutory, when the state legislature allocated these ARPA funds to this program, they set the max allowable for a distressed unit at 15 million, but you were awarded 350,000 in the last cycle. So that's where this 14,650,000 comes from. And just for perspective, the budget of that project is 19,380,000. So even if you receive the most amount of grant, you would still be looking at $4 or $5-ish million in near zero interest loan. It's important to note there's no delay in the schedule of this project. The efforts that our team is doing that are being released, those will continue. So we won't stop the work on this. The funding review and the funding submittal will be going on in the background while we're still working with your staff on the project design. So there's no delay or no challenge with implementation. And then this is an important question that Mr. Ferris asked, which is a good one. If you resubmit and you don't score high enough to be funded, then things proceed the same way as if you had not submitted at all. So what we are asking you to consider, and I should clarify, the question was, if you resubmit to try to get grant funds, do you lose the funds you already have? And the answer is no. So if we submit this project and it doesn't score high enough to get grant, then we would carry on as if you had never submitted in the first place.
So we have 11 days to submit this.
Mhm.
What, based on the spring, when should we know?
So they're expecting the announce in January, yes. And with these ARPA funds and American Rescue Plan Act funds, they do have a statutory expiration, December of 2026. So our experience, the reviewers of these are very diligent to keep these on schedule. You probably saw the press, there was like 1.6 billion in funding applications submitted in April. And we were shocked. Teams like ours that work with these all the time were shocked that they actually had all the results out in July for everyone to keep going. So we do expect that you will find out in January.
So would that be to completion of the project? 2026?
Yes, sir.
Completion.
The funds, as of right now, the federal American Rescue Plan Act funds are set. The word they're using is to sunset. They expired December 31st of 2026.
Okay, that's the same as.
It's,
all right, there.
it's the same as all the ARPA funds
That is
are the
correct.
same thing.
Yeah, all of them are. So we have been working on this application as we keep a lot of your records and files in our system. So the piece that would be formal recognition from you is if you pass the resolution that's before you, authorizing us to submit the application. I will just say Your finance team probably carries the burden of this process because we will begin to interface with them in a very short time frame to get this done. However, I think a lot of the documents that we used in the spring, because from what I understand, your audit has not been approved yet or presented yet, a lot of the finance documents won't change other than changing the dates. So, Mayor, that was what I wanted to go over. Happy to answer any questions. We think this is a good opportunity with basically no risk.
I think it's a great opportunity. We sure should do it. Council?
Absolutely.
Question?
Anything we can do to improve our odds? No.
Well, no, the funding application for these has gotten about as objective as it can, which is probably a good thing as they're getting inundated with applications. And this is a good one. You're resolving violations. It's replacing old infrastructure. We're going to make the argument that it qualifies as a green project because of the energy reduction. So there are a lot of, and you have a special order by consent, which is an important piece to the puzzle too. So we think it's a good opportunity.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So when we got our letter in June, the end of June, that we needed to make that designation, how many, if you know, and this may not be a fair question, how many others of us have just gotten that designation?
I don't know the answer to that.
And I agree. And then,
Yeah, and Rob, I don't know if you have a feel. There were 5. Okay, so Rob mentioned, so you were on the state water infrastructure agenda for September, correct, last week? And there were you plus 4. There were 5 of you.
So do you know how many total there are now?
I don't know, and Mayor, Mr. Ferris, I could get that to you tomorrow. I will. So we were going over this morning with Rob and several other of our team members. Being designated as distressed was a big leg up for utilities to get access to these funds. And I'll just give you the numbers. Right now, the pot of grant dollars for distressed utilities is $109 million across the state. In the spring application, it was $320 million that was given out to distressed utilities. A lot of the utilities and several of our clients got the full 15 million that they could get. So as we kind of started, we're trying to look at this glass half full. A lot of the folks who have access to this pot have already gotten their full 15. So we're looking at this glass half full. We think this is a really good opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Council, have any more questions?
Ms. Hughes, at one point, I think you mentioned when we were talking about local ARPA money, having these gentlemen come before us to, did this answer your question?
Well,
or?
I mean, I think, well, that's for the one project. So, we've got some money that we're trying to decide what to do with here by 2024. As you're aware of some of our projects that we're trying to get funding for, trying to get grant money for, but we also, I'm thinking, should we use some of that money for some of these bigger projects that, we obviously can't afford to do on their own, okay? But also understanding too that water is one of our, what's the word?
Enterprise funds?
Enterprise funds that should support those projects, so to speak. The mayor had said, we've got a 100-year-old pipe, right? Basically, from the water treatment. Give me where am I looking at?
52.
Yes. So we know that's an old pipe. It's 100 years old, and I'm thinking, do we need to take some of that money and use towards something like that? But then, water funds should support water projects potentially. So, I don't know. Have we looked at like the total cost of some of those projects lately? I mean.
Yes, ma'am. I believe I believe that Ms. Hughes is referring to the raw water line that transmits water from Baden Lake to the Highway 52 water plant, and that was constructed in 1949. Still very old, right? Not quite 100 years, but still very old.
Right.
So we have, and we actually submitted an application for that project in the spring. That was one of the 3 construction projects that you authorized in the April, whatever the date, April 29th application cycle. And it did not get funded, and we frankly did not expect it to. It doesn't score very well.
Okay.
The current total budget for that project is right at $28 million.
I'm sorry, did you say 28?
28, yes,
28
ma'am.
million. Okay.
Now, this is, when you submit an application and it does not get funded, they actually, they being the funding agency, automatically resubmits it every cycle, so it gets scored again and again, unless you specifically request to withdraw that. So we believe, and we've mentioned to Mr. Ferris and your staff about this, that application will be resubmitted this spring, or this fall, excuse me, in a couple of weeks. And I should say resubmitted. It'll be rescored by the funding agency. We are going to submit some follow-up documentation that we think will allow them to claim some of the points that we got docked from the last time. And a lot of this is tied to your relationship with Concord and Kannapolis, and I don't want to get into the details of the pointing of the scoring system. So we think it's possible that would get funded too, although it'd be entirely loan. And then you as a council and your staff would have to determine if this is the right time to pursue a project of that magnitude. So we have looked at those. There's some others. If you recall, in the spring, we submitted 3 applications. One was the $28 million raw water line that you mentioned. We submitted a sludge dewatering system at the Highway 52 water plant. And then we submitted the replacement or parallel of one of your primary pipelines that comes from Highway 52 down into the city. And none of those scored very well. But those are, when we've been interfacing with your staff and the projects that seem to what keeps us up at night. And let's talk about that. And those are the 3 that really kind of come to the top. So
28 million for the one project. What about the other 2? What is the estimate?
I think both the other 2 each were right around 5. Right around 5 each.
5 million.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we could send that to Mr. Ferris for,
Okay.
yeah.
If you would, I just
Be happy to.
refresh my.
Adam, you never have given us any kind of number, and this may not be a fair question, but we've had problems with the water reservoir on 52 for years leaking. How much to line that reservoir?
Yeah, some people might say I am a dam engineer, but I'm not a dam engineer. So, I don't know if it'd be appropriate for me to answer that. It'd be significant. The challenge with and the way you would actually fix that, the challenge with lining that is you really can't take that offline, right? Because you lose your supply.
Yep.
So you would fix it a different way. You would do, there are different types of injection that can be done. There are different types of netting that can be done to stop that. One of the things about dams is they get expensive very fast because of the hazard level and the level of risk and the level of scrutiny at the state regulatory level. So you could probably spend $1 million fixing just that one little leak. I say one little leak. I've seen it. It's a noticeable leak pretty quickly in that order.
You're saying fix the leak, not fix the entire dam?
No, you would not fix the entire dam. No, and I'm not sure if the entire dam needs to be fixed. And again, I'm not a dam engineer. We actually have looked at that with your team, and this, there are a lot of projects that are kind of moving in the background, and that's one of them. We've looked at that, and we have a relationship with a dam engineer in the state who's highly accredited and has a great reputation, and he's given some feedback and guidance on cost, and if that's something we need to pursue, we certainly can.
Now, at this point, we need to see where we're headed.
Yeah.
I think the grants will tell us quickly where we're headed on some of these projects. But thank you very much.
Yes, other questions?
I'm good. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Mayor.
Council, I'll entertain a motion that we pass resolution 22-33, funding application for the Long Creek wastewater treatment plant.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Hall, second by Councilmember Aldridge. Further discussion, Hughes, second by Councilmember Aldridge. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mayor.
Going back to number 7, departmental monthly reports or any agenda. Anyone have any questions?
I do have a couple. And I don't have them in any order as I have pulled them out just page by page. It appears that we have had 25 resignations in 8 months. and 3 retirements during this year. I still would like to, I know that we're supposed to be doing exit interviews. I would like to know or have something that we can have moving forward, or just to look at pros and cons and all those kinds of things for us, just because inquiring minds want to know. Attaboy to how many folks that we had in August at our Food Truck Friday. 4,000 people is a great number. The police department, I see that on our Take Back Drugs, is that in April, because we had an event, we took a lot back then, 50,000 units. Don't know if that's something we can do regularly, or I don't know how we can publicize that more. I know where it is because I take back drugs to the police department. I would just like for us to do as much PR as we can there, because all that we can get back to you stays out of other people's hands. I just applaud what you all did in April and hope we can continue that amount moving forward. Thank you very much. In finance, we just always get this monthly report, and now since public housing has been in our forefront the last month, just asking a question, and Michael, you might be able to answer this. If not, I'm sure that Jacob is out there and can do that. I see that we are, a sixth of the way through a year. I know that we ought to be about 16.5% to 17%. That's not my issue. My issue is of the 28% that's been spent in public housing right now, would that be capital, or is that, what is that?
This is Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, these percentages are percentage expend of the annual operating budget and exclude the capital fund programs. This is a multi-year project.
So do we get in that capital, because even though it's multi-year projects, I understand that, we have been thrown the number the last 6 weeks of $700,000 for this particular new year. Do we get a regular report on that like we do these reports? And if not, I would like for us to get that moving forward if we are supposed to be looking at what the capital funds are being spent on.
Right, that's right. Now, council approves the capital fund expenditure plan. But I understand what you're saying, but so you do see the plan, approve the plan, but no, they're not part of the reports, but we can ask housing and finances to add that section to the open capital fund programs we do have. I think there's just a couple $1,000s left in 2020. There's probably 100 to 150 left in 21. And then on the agenda tonight, finance put together the ordinance to authorize the expenditure of 22. And so those are the 3 that are.
Right. I just think moving forward, if this is not the capital, and I know that we approve the plan, I just would like to see that moving forward. Though it is not in the department reports, it is in the city manager report. And again, I still would like if somehow we could get these city manager reports put into the public eye. I think that folks need to see what's in them, because some of the things are of public interest. We have on here from your city manager's report from last week that the stormwater is going to be on the October 3rd agenda. I would respectfully move that we move that out from October 3rd to October 17th.
Actually, I was reminded today that, there's been a lot of discussion about it. It's been off, on, change, regroup. And somebody reminded me today that they maybe felt like council had left it, that they wanted to hear from First Tryon and putting different actions together. At the last meeting, council adjusted the first budget work session to be in November. I sent you the date in maybe last week, November 10 or 11, somewhere in there. So that's going to be the first time we're with First Tryon. So based on that, I kind of take back and have to adjust what I said Friday, because I was reminded of that First Tryon meeting. So that will move anything with the stormwater past the first strategic planning and budget work session in November.
So just to reiterate what you just said, what you said Friday is not good, the 3rd. And
Right,
the first meeting of the budget for next year is on Tuesday, November 15th, and that will be with First Tryon.
First Tryon will be present.
Okay.
So based on all those different moving parts and pieces, if we still want to hear from First Tryon first, that's what the schedule will have to adjust to.
And I would say that that's how I remembered it, is that we would hear from First Tryon before moving forward. So,
So the earliest that could even be discussed or brought to or would be the 21st of November. Would that be correct?
It could be brought back at 21st of
Of
November
November.
unless there's some additional information that comes out of the 15th session that needs to be gathered and prepared. I mean, at that point, we're preparing for the agenda as a
Right.
whole, and it's a little tough to
Right.
gather additional information, but potentially, yes.
Okay.
and my last thing, I will hold off because it's got something to do with public housing, and I will ask it a little bit later in the agenda.
Further from anyone else? Consent agenda, ordinance 2261, capital project budget AMI meter upgrade. Ordinance 2262, amending the fiscal year 22-23 operating budget. Ordinance 2263, 2022 public housing capital funds. And consider road closure for Fellowship of Christian Athletes 5K Run Walk.
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Motion by Councilmember Whitley to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Alders. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Under new business, number 13, purchasing policy update.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I want to first thank you for your time today and the opportunity to speak. Since stepping into my role as the Finance Director, I have tasked myself and my team to review all of our existing policies and procedures, and I'm pretty excited to share this with you today, which is nearly a year's worth of hard work coming to you. The policy that you have in front of you for consideration is the culmination of a lot of hours of staff's time, including the leadership team. This time was spent seeking feedback, researching, and consulting with experts across North Carolina. With me tonight, I have Assistant Finance Director Kimber Herlocker and the Purchasing Coordinator Linda Lewis. Both of these individuals were just absolutely critical in getting this policy to you tonight. And with that, I will turn this next slide over to Kimber.
Good evening, Council. Let's talk about timeline. So we really started talking with leadership on November 10th of 2021, so almost a year. We met at the meeting, we reviewed the current purchasing policy, and just started having conversations with the group. In the following months, weeks, days, we took and started talking to them individually, as departments, together in groups. We've spoke with employees individually, by email, on the phone, in person, just lots and lots of different ways. We have also extensively researched. We've worked with the School of Governments on their blog. We've looked at the listserv. We have reached out to other municipalities, local governments. We've taken some classes. I'm currently in classes for my finance certification right now. So in those seated classes especially, I've had chances to network and talk and just really be able to ask those questions. What are you doing? And to see if we're making sure we're aligned and on the same page and what they're looking toward, just to make sure we can keep doing the best we can. I'm going to say it again, consulted with professionals across the state, such as procurement officers, finance officers, and directors, and the UNC School of Government Procurement and legal professors. We've had quite a few meetings with them recently, just seeking help and guidance to see which way, what's best for us. We've reviewed and compared 20 different municipal procurement policies from units with populations similar to Albemarle, as well as smaller and larger. So we have really, really done some homework with this one. I've learned a lot. There's been a lot of things that's really stood out to me. Our findings are that we are in line with a lot of our other organizations. Small changes could be made to evolve our processes, but we're headed in the right direction. We're doing really well.
Okay, policy checkup and review. We have our strategic plan. One of the major goals is organizational capacity. And, with that, from a finance perspective, there comes periodic reviews. One of the elements of the strategic plan speaks to organizational capacity, and contained in that is developing ongoing feedback. So periodic reviews first encourage continuous discussions of the needs of the organization. Speaking of ongoing feedback, there's ongoing feedback and continued education from outside sources. So periodic review also ensures policies and procedures stay consistent with our peers and changes to procurement laws. Finally, as the city evolves, so too must the policy. Situations may change, but the fundamentals and the intent of the policy do not change. Therefore, periodic reviews balance fiscal controls with operational needs to meet anticipated city growth. Now I have some highlights for you of some of the more significant things of note. First of all, there is a section for HUD regulations and public housing. This is a reminder of where to go for sources such as guidebooks and other handbooks and resources that are specific to HUD. Guidance from HUD has always been available, and that has not changed. This section just adds additional context to our policy regarding the guidance that HUD provides regarding their procurement requirements. This is the same as with any federal grantor agency such as FEMA, or even when new rounds of funding comes out like through ARPA, there's your standard uniform guidance that you always follow, but you do consult with your grantor agency for any additional guidance.
So question right there. So if I'm understanding correctly, we've never had one up until now. This is a new 4.8. Is that right?
That section 4.8, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Part of speaking with other towns and directors, we reached out to a couple of municipalities that are similar to us in nature, such as Shelby, Chapel Hill, Concord. I really like Chapel Hill. But most of the organizations like us do reference uniform guidance because that's the standard. That was the intent of uniform guidance, was to bring all federal agencies under one umbrella, and thus, you have uniform guidance incorporated into your policy. It covers your state and local procedures as well. But the town of Chapel Hill in particular had this section. It was mainly a reference point to point out, since this is part of your operations, HUD has HUD handbooks and they have capital fund guidebooks, and it just provided links to those resources. So that's why we're incorporating that in here today.
So, but my question though, we have not had one until now. Is that correct?
This section in particular is new.
Okay. So we have not, this is brand new. This part is
Yes, ma'am.
4.8. Thank you.
Okay. Another important change is emergency purchasing procedures. What we have included is recommended best practices per the UNC School of Government. And what that says is, in the event of an emergency, such as a natural disaster, the best practice is to have City Council adopt a resolution that sets out the facts constituting the emergency. It can be made after the purchase if timing is an issue. And finally, there are the procurement thresholds. We have increased these to match with state and federal procurement laws. Part of the review of the 20 different procurement policies, what we did is we took them and ranked them by population sizes of a range of about 0 to 10,000, 10,000 to about 100,000, and then 100,000 and plus. And what we found was that populations below 10,000 tend to have a lower threshold than what is required by the state and federal laws, which was 3 or 4, about 75% of what we could find. Populations over 10,000 but less than 100,000 tend to have thresholds that match state and federal laws, 8 of 12, or approximately 67%. Populations over $100,000 tend to, over 100,000 tend to have lower thresholds than what is required by state and federal laws. It's about 75%. We found about 4 of them. So I found that the most interesting part of this. What you see is small towns, small population sizes, your procurement policies are generally pretty tight, which, kind of makes sense. You may not have as complex organizations and purchasing needs, so it can be managed much better. Once you get in the range where we are with a population size of about 16,000, you do see those start to open up to match state and federal. And that's, where near the end of that, you start seeing procurement divisions or the expansion of more than one procurement officer. And what I just found the most surprising is when you're looking at, some fairly large cities, those restrictions, it gets much tighter where it's just, you've got your P card, and then you do purchase orders, which, is contracted through the purchasing division from like a centralized purchasing perspective.
Question, is the public housing procurement thresholds fall into the same line here, I guess, as state and federal, or do they have their own thresholds?
That's a great question, and one that we have posed with HUD. We're pending a response. Their handbooks and their guidebooks that they have often reference what the federal micro purchase threshold is, reference $2,000 or $3,000. Those are fairly old. As of 2018, the micro purchase threshold was 10,000. But when all things procurement, you do take the most restrictive as written. So we have that question pending to our local field office, waiting a response.
So you'll let us know when that.
And to that end, when you get that, will that be under the, I see you have 3 dots in front of you. Would that be under the first dot, or is that going to be then under the 3rd dot?
The procurement thresholds would be under the 3rd dot, which
Even
would
if
be,
it's HUD?
yes, which would be mostly guided by that section 4 covering federal uniform guidance.
Okay.
The HUD regulations and public housing section would refer to any specific additionals that housing themselves want to have for procurement records. So, when it comes to FEMA, you may be doing a purchase that requires a price analysis. Well, FEMA may want you to do that on a FEMA form, and that's what they want you to have saved. Housing and HUD may have similar requirements, or they could have additional requirements.
So back to your 3 dots in front of you, I've printed out the new one, and I'm just trying to cross-reference what the chapters are.
Mhm.
The HUD requirement, the change, as I understand it, is to the 4.8. The emergency purchasing is 5.7. Where's the procurement that is being changed?
The procurement thresholds, you'll find those in the section 2 and section 3. It speaks to the particular contract types. So when you get to procurement, there's 2 kind of critical foundational sources is, first of all, what's your source of funding? Is it federal or non-federal? And then what type of contract are you looking at? Are you buying a thing? Are you paying for someone's time and service or a professional? Or are you building and repairing a thing?
So 2.8, is that correct? Do you all know? I think
2.2 starts at purchase contract.
2 point what?
Yes.
2.2 starts at purchase contract.
Okay.
Yeah.
Type of contracting.
As a general overview of the 4 contract types, section 2.2 purchase contracts is broken out into non-federal procurement ranges, and then the following section 2.2.2 is for the federal procurement as at a high level before you
So
get into the
changes in that
details.
one, changes in that one.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
2.2, 2.22, and what's the other one?
It's in this section 2 here, you've got 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, and 2.5. They all follow similar patterns where the first subsection under that tells you generally what the non-federal procurement levels are, and then the second section is what the federal would be.
And those are the changes there. And did you mention something in 3 as well?
Once you get into sections 3 and 4, you get more into the particulars on procedures that you would follow for non-federal procurement methods or federal procurement methods.
So changes were made in which ones?
These sections are part of the reorganization that we have made to the policy so that it includes these 2 pillars, which I feel strengthens, our already really good policy that we have. So section 3, the intent is you're looking at it as non-federal procurement methods and procedures. So it talks about discretionary spending under $30,000, where previously our limit would have been, say, 5,000, where you start hitting from a non-federal perspective, the informal range. That's what the state says. State is 0 to 30.
Okay, thank you.
And that's it. So I'll entertain any additional questions or thoughts.
Where is this? I tried to find the current one on our website and I went under finance and obviously I'm not looking. If the public or somebody wanted to look, obviously we're going to vote on it here shortly, but where do I find this on our website?
Good question. Do we have that? Do we have a link posted to that? We do not. That's a great point. We can totally get it up there. And in fact, with my review was very helpful for the municipalities that did have it posted to their website.
Okay.
So that's a great idea.
So we don't have it on there as,
Not currently.
okay.
Well, once we get it all done, please put it out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Further questions?
Nice job.
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion that we approve the purchasing policy.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Aldridge,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hughes. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very
Number
much.
14, sole source Tantalus for advanced metering infrastructure. I'm assuming I pronounced that correctly.
Otherwise known as smart meters.
Yes.
Sorry, trying to get you guys back to. Yeah. Sounds good.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. So in your agenda packet, you should have a pretty long-winded memo explaining what this request is.
And
really wanted
I
to
read
break it
that,
down.
I read that long-winded memo.
Thank
too.
you. I appreciate that. I wanted to break it down to a rather granular level to bring some understanding to what we're asking for tonight and why we're asking for it. You should also have some supporting documentation from Itron, Tantalus, as well as city staff explaining the intrinsic details that go into this sort of decision. Finance and utilities have worked fairly hard on proving this case. And just to reiterate that it simply comes down to the fact that Tantalus is the only licensed holder of reading Itron endpoints, otherwise known as ERTs, encoder receiver transmitters. Our water meters in the city, roughly 50% of them are 100W endpoints, which basically they do not have to be replaced as part of this smart meter migration. So that saves the city a lot of time, money, and effort in making this AMR to AMI migration. So basically the request before you tonight is to sole source Tantalus as the vendor of supporting and designing our AMI migration. And I'd rather spend this time, instead of presenting those granular details, of answering any questions or concerns that you might have.
Thank you, because that was pretty detailed memo.
You're welcome.
Council have any
Which I like.
questions,
You're welcome.
comments? I'll entertain a motion to approve the sole source contract with Tantalus.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Hall, second by Councilmember Townsend. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 15, Public Power Week agenda.
All right. So Public Power Week is the first week of October, October 3rd to October 7th. It's a very important week for us. It's a week that we not only spread awareness of public power and what it does for our citizens, but it's also a week that we appreciate the work that our linemen do. They work around the clock to keep everyone's lights on and the system maintained. So we have a small list of events that we're planning for that week. Every single day is going to have some media story that we're working with David on to basically explain the entire process of what the city does for power, all the way from the electric linemen, the boots on the ground, to the back end people that run the substations and the metering, all the way to customer service, the front lines of helping and assisting the customers with their billing and needs. So also during the week, we're going to have a public power table here in City Hall. We've ordered some merchandise from Electricities that has all the public power branding. Customers are more than welcome to come in, grab some of that merchandise. It's going to be a plethora of cups, stickers, pens, hats, things of that nature, just to appreciate them as customers of being customers of our public power.
On Tuesday, we're going to have a 9 a.m. visit to Park Ridge Christian School. This is going to be a small event for the kids to come and basically tour the trucks. There's going to be a pole climbing demo and basically look at all the equipment, familiarize the kids with all the equipment that we use. Thursday, very similar event, 9 a.m. at YMCA Park. We'll have Central Elementary and West Albemarle Middle School.
Stop right there. We don't have a West Albemarle Middle. We have Central Elementary and East
it's just-
Elementary, and then we have Albemarle Middle. So it is my hope that we are doing both elementary schools and maybe the middle school. But if we do Central Elementary, we really need to do East Elementary as well.
Yes, and sorry for the error of the west part on there.
But is it East Elementary or is it the middle school?
So it is the middle school. Jennifer has actually reached out to the other elementary school, has not received a response. We're still doing some follow-ups and getting that involvement. So,
And if you don't get, please reach out to somebody up here, because we have got, several of us have contacts to those schools, and I'm sure that if you're doing it at Central, that East would love it as well.
yes, ma'am, absolutely.
Thank you.
If you wouldn't mind reaching out, that would be very helpful.
I would be happy to do so tomorrow.
Thank you. At those events, again, we're going to have the trucks and equipment to demo a pole climbing demo and also goodie bags for all the kids as well. On Friday, we will be present at Food Truck Friday. We'll have a small giveaway table and a line truck exhibit just for anyone that wants to stop by, ask any questions. And for Public Power Week, that's pretty much what we're doing.
So go back then to Central, you're doing it not at the school, but at the park, right? At the YMCA.
That is correct.
And do you know, and this may not be fair, do you know what grades or what age you're asking or making this available to?
We're making it available to all.
To Kate, okay. So East, I will make that contact tomorrow and get back with you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And we reached out to most of the schools, all the schools in the city limits, and these are the ones that we have received responses from. So we put them on the agenda.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Council, further questions? Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 16, consider Peel Scooter Agreement. Ms. Birch?
So this is just a contract that council discussed bringing back before you about the scooter program. I do believe there are some representatives from Peel here this evening. In short, this is a pilot agreement for a period of 12 months. There'll be 20 scooters. There are 20 scooters within the city. The Peel company has stated that they're okay with the prohibition on sidewalks in the downtown area, and they do have the software to ban users who they can monitor remotely that are driving on the sidewalks to ban their accounts from future use within the city of Albemarle. So that's kind of the short spiel of the things that are included in the agreement. Obviously, insurance, identification, liability falls completely on the company. But in short, that's what's in the agreement, and I'm sure the representatives from Peel can answer any questions about the operations of the scooters if there are any.
And you're comfortable with the way it's worded for they cannot be on a sidewalk, correct?
I am. I think that was council's, from my understanding, it was a prohibition on sidewalks downtown. So
Come on up.
How it's detailed in the agreement.
Is that covered in the agreement by whoever it is that says they'll adhere to local ordinances and all that? Since we have an ordinance that says you can't be on sidewalk.
I read that, Ms. Birch.
I'm sorry, Mr. Whitley, I didn't hear.
So not riding on the sidewalk is covered in the agreement by them agreeing to adhere to local ordinances,
That is correct.
since we have an ordinance against that.
Yeah, typically we do a catch-all, all applicable laws, ordinances, regulations, so we don't have to list them one by one. And if they change in the future, Appeal agrees to be held to whichever is applicable at the time.
Have you made that change yet for sidewalks?
Yes, sir.
'Cause we saw a group of them tonight.
Yep.
on the sidewalk.
So yeah, once this contract's signed, we have everything, like the rider education, the hang tags that's defined in the contract. We're gonna start shuffling those in. And then we can just watch, as soon as we see riders, we give them a one-time warning on the sidewalk, then they have a 24-hour suspension. If continued behavior continues, then they're gonna receive something like a permanent ban.
And the tag talks about age?
Yes, sir. Tag and the pop-up on the app, which I can send you pictures of and probably get you hard copies as well.
That's a couple things that have come up in the last week that I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure of.
Yes, sir.
I still think somehow we got to get that out there publicly because 9 times out of 10, 90% of the people that open up an app, they're gonna
Yeah.
go through the motions. They're not gonna read the fine
I agree
print
completely.
and pay for it, so.
Hopefully the hang tag, they do a good job catching attention, but if we could do like a social media post with the city as well, that'd go a long way.
The city's going to post on social media once we have something confirmed and in place. We left the last meeting with an idea of what those might be, but we're waiting until there's actual agreement. So we won't post one thing, create confusion, have to back up on those things. So once it's in place, David already has some information ready to go.
So which of these two emails in this agreement should we use if we need to contact you? Or there's support at peelscooters.com and
You could do that or just contact me directly. I'm on the email stream. Either or will work. The support just funnels to me and Antonio, or you could just send it directly to me.
Further questions?
Yes, sir. Just a comment. Mr. Knight, good to see you back here tonight. Quick question for you, and this may have come up in other municipalities or other areas where you are, but Saturday afternoon, approximately between, I can't remember the exact time, it was between 6:30 and 7 o'clock, I saw 3 of the scooters on South First Street. I guess that would have been the corner of South First and West South. Of the 3 scooters in operation, one was operated by a gentleman probably in his late 30s, mid 30s, late 30s. The other 2 being operated by probably, my best guesstimate would be a child probably around 6 or 7 years old, and then maybe one around 10 or 11 years old.
So
that's a big concern to me.
Yeah, that is also of mine because that brings up a huge risk. Obviously, the kids didn't start it themselves. It would be the parent. And one person can open up multiple rides. So
They can?
Yes, ma'am.
How many?
Could bypass like an ID verification with that as well. As to judge of just a bad decision, that would be very hard to limit, to be honest, because I can't stop. I don't know if this young
But
kid.
the liability falls back on the parent.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, obviously, if something happens, that was his decision to
Yes,
do
ma'am.
that with his children.
Correct.
And you actually see that everywhere you go. You
Mhm.
know, it's not just here. You
Yeah.
know,
No,
Yes,
it's a very
it's kids,
common,
yeah.
hey, kids, let's go ride the scooters this morning. I mean, so.
I think it's just going to be getting the information out there and continuing to public.
Educate.
Yeah,
How about education?
yeah.
And I could probably
Let him
actually
know.
go in if you find the timestamp and give the rider a warning, like, hey, stop this behavior.
Yeah.
This isn't.
And again, I'm just trying to protect you. I'm trying to protect the city.
Yes, sir.
I'm not anti-scooter at all. I love seeing them out downtown. I saw 3 or 4 over on West Main Street just last night. So again,
So
I
we could,
appreciate everything.
if we see something of concern, we can take a shot of it, email you the
100%.
picture with the timestamp.
Yep. And we hired our first employee today.
All right,
Yeah,
great.
awesome.
He lives in downtown Albemarle, like seconds away from here.
Good.
Spent the day training with him, so we should be good to go. And
That's
awesome.
good to hear.
Yes, ma'am.
So what's your average daily usage now?
From last meeting, I think we're at 960 rides. Still 53 minutes is the average ride per day.
How many?
53 minutes, which is
How many rides per day?
9,
9.
total.
no,
Oh no, 26 rides per day.
but
Just averaging
900.
rides per day,
900
53
total.
minutes,
Okay.
and 950 something
Okay.
total.
So is that beyond what you expected, or did
Completely. Yes, yes, ma'am.
you have? Okay, good.
Yep.
Good.
It's actually crushing the industry standards right now.
Go Albemarle.
Yeah, go Albemarle. We love Albemarle.
So just a reminder, and again, I'm not the negative nanny.
Yes, ma'am.
This is your first municipality,
Full time. Yes, ma'am.
right? Because in High Point, as I'm gently reminded, the little angel on my right shoulder says, we're only in High Point during furniture market.
Bi-yearly. Yes, ma'am.
So this is going to be your claim to fame to
Yes,
a
ma'am.
certain extent. And again, I'm all about doing what we can do to promote, but safety is a big thing. I have heard from some folks, and I'll just tell you to my fellow council members, if we agree to have the attorney enter into this contract on our behalf, or the mayor, whomever is going to end up signing it, we probably will hear from some folks out there that are not in, not in favor of doing this, and all all of the negative downsides. So we just need to be prepared for that. All that may be, okay? Well, there's a lot of people out there that love them, but we're gonna hear from some folks, okay? And those folks, I think, are as afraid of getting hurt. Not so much the riders getting hurt, but other people getting hurt. And mentioned to me, okay, they're going to be riding in the road. So what happens when they're riding in the road and they can't get up that hill on West Main, headed east on West Main up that hill, okay, down that way. And I'm wanting to get around them. I mean, so just know that it's going to be out there, guys. And I've had to, being out in public, I've had to defend those things. So I don't know if other folks have had those comments, folks downtown. But
Further comment? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Hughes, second by Councilmember Townsend. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Wish you well.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Be in contact. Thank you.
Thank you.
Briefly coming around, I'll start. Dexter, thank you very much for the grill off Saturday. I thought it was a wonderful event and excellent food, and I think you ran out of food for most all of it. So I was very pleased it was such a success. So please tell the other sponsors and participants, thank you.
Thank y'all.
Mr. Ferris,
You have anything to add?
Mr. Townsend.
Yes, I'll also like to just add to what the mayor said. I want to thank everybody from city staff, especially our public information officer and our parks and recreation staff. And those of you that was in attendance, you know, I think this was one of our better years for the grill off competition, and hopefully it'll continue to get bigger and better. You know, I do appreciate the support. One of the things I heard from a local, I guess, a food vendor, I'm gonna say food vendor. I didn't get an opportunity to meet, go to the last festival that Bait and Brew's done, and I heard outstanding things about it. I think the crowd was in great attendance, and they got another one planned for October 8th, from what I'm hearing. I guess one of the concerns from one of the local food vendors is he see where they accept applications for merchant vendors, but is there no opportunities, to y'all knowledge, for local food vendors, such as I think a young man that just started like a lemonade type stand. He said, I think that Sunny Day Markets they have a set group of vendors that travel with him, and no opportunities. Are y'all aware of that? You know,
I just know that Sunny Day, and I don't know if is Joey out there anywhere? I know that's who basically they're getting all the outside vendors from.
I would just hope that we can be as inclusive as possible for our local vendors as well, you know, especially if we blocking off the city streets and stuff in the city limits of Albemarle. You know, we want to open up the door of opportunity for everybody as much as possible. And going back to the grill off, when I was given recognition, I want y'all to recognize the chief back there. He's a local grill master.
Which chief?
Chief of police.
Oh,
he came out there and grilled some chicken wings the weekend, and I heard a lot of people talking about how good they were. So I see you got some skills, Chief. We also getting continued complaints about speeding throughout various city streets in Albemarle. I know we addressed it. Well, we didn't address it. We heard reports from traffic studies and things of that nature, but I don't know what other measures we can take. You know, you can put increased enforcement or whatever. You know, I think everybody. I keep hearing a request for speed bumps, and I know that's not our practice, but at some point we got to find some sort of solution to some of these speeders before somebody get hurt. You know, I'll leave it like that.
Ms. Hughes.
As we all know, last Monday, we had a meeting over at the E.E. Waddell Center with some folks, with the public housing director. Brett was there, Cindy was there. So I guess one of my questions is during that time we heard from a resident. She was at 1446 Inger. We had talked about heard possibly getting into the Family Life Center. Is there any update on that?
Talked to Darlene, I guess it was Friday.
Darlene
I
is-
told, assistant director. I told y'all that, HUD supervisor had come back and she has approved it. And we are in the process of doing the paperwork. It's pretty lengthy paperwork,
Okay.
but they're trying to do that. They also have another one they said that may come online that's being renovated right now. But our intention is still to get her into something as quick as possible. I would prefer the Family Life Center because it's a 5-bedroom to a 5-bedroom.
Right.
But we'll see what they can pull together and get that online. It took going to the supervisor of HUD to get that straightened out. I think it was some miscommunication with the field office rather than what they understood we were wanting to do.
And this has all been communicated to the resident to know that we are.
I was told by her that Dr. Scott was meeting with that resident that day.
On Friday?
Either Thursday or Friday. I can't say whichever day it was. They were meeting with that
I would
resident.
like just a follow-up from him that he has met with her. I mean, that was a very moving situation that night there. What the HVAC system? What are the facts on the HVAC system?
It's in process. That's the best I can tell you at this time. There was some errors that had to be corrected, but I think Mr. Ferris will update you on that later.
Okay. I'm just looking over my notes here. So I guess my question is with regards to, well, Councilmember Hall sent us an email, very detailed on the meeting that night with all that occurred. I think we need to address or answer these questions. What is our intent on, if they're watching us or, want to know the answers, how are we going to address all these things?
Well, I can tell you what my thoughts are. I reached out to Wayne Stogner last week and talked to him for a long time, and he's supposed to come this week, and we're going to walk the apartments. Now, I would like to have some input on council. My opinion is we don't go in and camera the pipes and patch. We tear them out, fix them right, and be done the first time.
Absolutely.
I don't want to patch.
No.
Let's do it right and do it right the first time, even though it's going to cost a little bit more.
Right.
Let's do it right. Now, if council's in agreement with that, that's what we'll tell the architect when he comes.
And we're still looking at February before?
No,
Okay.
not saying that. He's going to come and we're going to
Okay.
walk and see.
Okay, so that's one of the
Until he
major-
gets here, I can't tell you what the date is.
Okay.
Hang tight to that, though, and I know it's not my time to speak, but housing in the department reports, there's a comment, and that's when I said I would talk about this later. In the housing report from last week, or from this month, Stogner plans to conduct final inspections September 12th through the 16th, 22, which would have been last week. Did he come last week?
That's burn units. I can't answer that.
No, this is not, my understanding, this is not just burn units. It might be, but it does not say that it's just burn units, okay? I don't know.
My understanding was that was burn units.
Oh, did he come?
I cannot answer that.
Okay, so I think that,
We need an update on the burn
so
units.
that was in his report. So
Yeah.
I think we need to, go
Ask
ahead,
about the
Martha.
burn units too. I just think we need to address their questions and comments that they made Monday night to us. I think we all felt some sympathy for those folks not knowing that these things had occurred, and we need to address. If I were them, I would want each one of their topics addressed in some form of fashion. So I think we as a council we need to make sure that happens. That's all.
But to that end, I don't know if you all saw Sunday's paper. If you have not seen Sunday's paper, I mean, the news and press was there. So even if it were not the 40 people that were there that night, okay, the community knows what the issues have been brought before us now. So we cannot say we don't know about these things. And they do deserve to have an answer to what's going on.
And they do. That's the reason we need to know what to tell Mr. Stogner so we can put this together and Dr. Scott can put that in his plan of action, how quick we can move forward. And Mr. Stogner's going to have to give us the first answer on that, how quick he can move forward. Mr. Aldridge?
Nothing, sir.
Ms. Louder? Ms. Hall?
Well, staying on this public housing, do we have, is Dr. Scott here?
He's not here.
Okay, so Michael, do we have a public housing inspector?
We have a Section 8 inspector who's also doing some of the inspections in public housing.
Okay.
Eric Allsbrook.
Right, and I asked him that question the other night, okay? And he basically said, I am the Section 8 and doing this other job too. But I asked him because it seemed like, I asked that question because it was of interest to me. So we don't have one that's just designated for public housing.
That's
okay.
correct. Maintenance staff does the inspection, the resident services does the inspection, and Mr. Allsbrook does part of the inspections too, because he has a lot of construction knowledge as well.
Right, and he told us that last week.
That's what comprises his job.
Okay. Congratulations to police chief. I saw that we pinned a new officer in the last week or so. I would just ask Michael in the future, if they do those public kinds of events, if we could be notified, because I would like to, that particular one that was pinned, I would have liked to have been there to give him support. So I know in the past, sometimes they do it in here, and would like to know about that. I did see that we had a police officer cadet resign. Do we still, Michael, with those cadets, have any kind of thing where after so much that they have to pay us back and that kind of thing if we paid them?
Unless something has changed, there was an agreement that they had to pay if they left after a certain period of time. That may be after completing school, I don't know. Chief?
And it might be he needs to come up here so we can hear, but I just know that, I don't know when in the process that he resigned. I just saw that on the resignation.
Yeah, that cadet in particular has been with us for more than a year. He was actually hired before I came here.
Okay.
He had a family emergency and had to be taken out of the academy, but we kept him on board in an admin position. We had the staffing for that. And then he did complete the academy. He's in the National Guard and was deployed. And just prior to his deployment is when he submitted his resignation. That we currently don't have anything in place for repayment or contractual for the training of the academy or anything else. We have talked about it. I've explored it throughout my career. There's pros and cons with
I
that.
can see that, yes.
And I'm particularly not in favor of it. I can look at it though and get some input.
I just stay right there though, Michael. I knew that we did somewhere, okay, and I couldn't remember where. Okay, if it was in fire, is it in fire, Chief? Do we have it in fire? Even if we are paying them while they're being trained, right? Okay. But it seemed like to me, Michael.
You're referring back to a 3-year training agreement that was put together, believe it or not, by Henry W. for us before he left. And we had used that. Now, I do not know. I've been gone 12 years now. So I don't know whether it stopped after that or when it stopped. But there used to be a 3-year training agreement that Mr. W. put together for us.
So then I guess it was a good question that I asked, particularly if Michael wasn't sure what the answer was and nobody really knew. Okay.
Yeah. And with the academy and with the cost of that, plus all the training we give through the FTO, it's about a 3-year break-even point.
Okay.
The issue comes up where if we go after them civilly to get that money, the recovery.
Oh, no. I guess I just was remembering something, and when I have seen people depart, and I'm just wondering, because what I don't want us to be for anybody in the city of the training ground, any department. And because we put time and effort into that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Grants, I was at a COG meeting last week, and there is a grant training. Michael, you might have gotten information about it, but it's a grant workshop the first week of October. I don't know if we've got anybody that needs to go or should go, but something that COG is putting together. And we were gently reminded, and gently with capital letters reminded, that we do have someone that COG contracts with that will read over state and federal grants for us, and we just need to use them as often as possible just to read through them. And I say that for my fellows members up here is that there's somebody there that will read through these things. Lastly, the speeding, I'm glad you brought that up, Mr. Townsend. Since school has started, I hate to say it, but since school has started, there's been a great deal of speeding on North 6th Street, between Park Ridge, headed south there on North 6th, at Hawthorne. They'll get in that curve, and it's amazing how that curve is not straight, and it's amazing we haven't had somebody try to straighten that curve out. Either way, AM and PM, they're just right through there. And a lot of people are taking their halves out of the middle of the road, which is very scary to a lot of people. Their lane. I do believe that is all. Thank you very much.
Mr. Whitman.
Just a couple of things. Seems like Saturday was my day to eat, so I'll tell Councilman Townsend how much I enjoyed being over at E. Waddell, and that was really good. I know y'all had to hopefully made a lot of money to support that over. It was really good. For those that didn't go, you really missed some good barbecue. Dinner on Main was that evening. All those that had anything to do with putting that on, the Chamber of Commerce and especially the police department, we had a couple of folks there who showed a real good presence, and that was probably one of the best events they've put on. If you get a chance to go to that next year sometime, you should do that. Also, last thing is RPO meeting last week. We had a combined meeting with the staff and elected officials since there was no real action to be taken. But that consisted mostly of a presentation by DOT on their electric vehicle program, and they are running wide open with that. Some of the major corridors in the state, they're using some of the funding, infrastructure funding that's available, and they're probably going to have, after the plan is approved down the road, some EV charging stations every 50 miles or so. They'll be looking for grant requests down the road from us for other places around that we think could benefit from that. And Michael, I did send her an email to get the number of vehicles registered in 28001. And she sent me a number, and then she emailed back and said, don't use that. And she's doing something else. So if she sends that to me, I'll let you know.
Yeah, I got it from the DMV when we were considering the electric vehicle charging stations.
Yeah.
They broke it down by Stanley County, then specifically the Albemarle zip code. So
Yeah.
it's out there.
She's going to bring that current. Also, those of you that are interested, they told us that the Bethany Road up here where the bridge has been out for so long should be open next month in case anyone uses that. Michael, can you think of anything else?
I don't know.
I didn't bring my notes.
I got a question.
Yeah.
I emailed Michael, and he has tried to handle it with DOT and the ABC store. So I told her, I said, the grass doesn't get mowed out there, let me know. Because they told you they were going to handle it. Well, I don't guess anybody's mowed out there. They don't want us to do it because of all the construction. But I've gotten a phone call from Kim Love, and she said, it's dangerous out there to come in and out with the grass. So who will mow that?
We can reach out to DOT again. The problem is it's under contract to a contractor. The contractor is supposed to keep it up. We can reach out to DOT again, but they probably will not do it themselves until the contractor does it.
I mean, it's a traffic hazard. If you can, Michael, reach back out to whoever you had initially. I just thought about that, Chris, when you were talking about that.
Yeah.
She stopped by the branch and said they still haven't mowed.
Think further?
That's it.
Mr. Aldridge?
To that comment, Ms. Hughes, I think one of the challenges is it's grass, but it's also trees. I mean, there's like trees that have grown up there in that construction zone, so
hard to see.
it is hard to see. So there's actually trees in that area.
Okay, well, one more thing since you mentioned that. The 2427 widening to the bridge, the eastern part is on schedule. The western part is a little bit behind over there where all that construction seems to be continuing, but it's still on schedule to be completed by the end of next year. 23.
I'll entertain.
And there's two things going on this week. You've got a managers meeting on this week, is that right?
I have a mayor's meeting, and you have a
goal
meeting too. We're both in Greensboro, but at different locations.
That's right, goals meeting. And the day before, they have asked me to do, I'm going to be speaking on ARPA on the day before.
Anybody have any goals that we need to put in for the league this year? I didn't hear any response back when I asked before. Okay. I'll entertain a motion that we go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143, 31811A3 and 6 to consult with the city attorney and personnel.
So move.
Motion by Councilmember Whitley,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hughes. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, motion carries. A motion, we go back into regular session.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Aldridge, second by Councilmember Hughes. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Coming out of closed session, we have nothing to report. I'll entertain a motion that we adjourn until our next meeting on October 3rd at 6:30. Motion by Councilmember Hall, second by Councilmember Aldridge. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries.